Chapter 750. It was around 7 o'clock in the evening in Bali. Poplar Fruit had finished his work and fed Kiki, who had followed Sister Luo Danny to play in the afternoon. He took out his phone and looked at the time. It was around 11 o'clock in the morning in America, where Fong Beibei was. Finally, he didn't have to call so early in the morning. This way, Kiki could also talk to Fong Beibei. Poplar Fruit thought and called Fong Beibei. "Uncle, are you done?" Fong Beibei's voice was soft. It seemed like she was still jet-lagged and was very tired. Why are you so tired? Didn't you sleep well when you arrived in America yesterday?" Poplar Fruit asked. His tone sounded like he was blaming her, but he was more concerned about her. "I slept for a long time on the plane. When I arrived at the hotel, it was already late at night. I didn't feel sleepy at all." "You were training at that time." "So, I chatted with my senior for the whole night. I woke up in the morning to go shopping. When I came back to the hotel, I was so tired." Fong Beibei yawned and said, "Then, why don't you sleep for a while? We can talk again tomorrow?" Poplar Fruit was worried about his girlfriend and was about to hang up the phone. "Don't!" Fong Beibei shouted. She laughed and said, "I'm lying on the bed. Talk to me. I want to hear your voice. I didn't call you yesterday because I was on the plane." Poplar Fruit felt warm in his heart, but he couldn't help but scold her. "When can't you hear my voice? Hurry up and sleep. Anyway, we can talk again tomorrow. Why don't I give you twice the time tomorrow?" "Don't talk about tomorrow. I get angry when you mention tomorrow," Fong Beibei said angrily. "Why?" Poplar Fruit asked. "You don't know. Our team leader is so mean." Fong Beibei pouted and said, "Today, we were suddenly notified that from tonight onwards, our mobile phones will be confiscated and we will enter a closed training before the competition. Didn't you say that mobile phones and other communication devices can only be used during the 3 days of the competition?" Poplar Fruit asked doubtfully. "Yeah. He said he was afraid that we wouldn't be able to control ourselves, so he gave us 4 days to get used to it." Fong Beibei said unhappily, "I don't know why they are so crazy. I heard from senior brother and senior sister that they didn't have such a request in the past." Poplar Fruit frowned and said, "You can't contact your family for 7 consecutive days? Isn't this too inhumane? I've asked around. I heard that in the previous season, a team from Shanghai was caught using a mobile phone during a competition." Shan Hong's voice suddenly came from the other end of the line. Fong Beibei was staying in the same room as senior sister Shen Hong in the hotel. Although it's just that she couldn't bear the pressure and confided in her family and didn't really cheat, it's still treated as cheating. It has a bad influence. So many schools have adopted this strategy this year. Senior sister. Hearing the voice, Poplar Fruit could imagine Fong Beibei on the other end of the line getting up from the bed with a red face and shyly shouting, "You eavesdropped on my phone call." "Haha, you were talking to your boyfriend on the phone so loudly that I heard it as soon as I came in." "You can't blame me." Shan Hong laughed and said jokingly, "I'll talk to you in the safe passage." Fong Beibei was shy. She was still too shy to whisper sweet nothings to Poplar Fruit in front of senior sister, so she ran out shyly. At this time, Kiki ran back to the room, because Poplar Fruit was still staying in Artel's villa at night because of the rehearsal at the Louvre tomorrow, and saw her father talking on the phone. Kiki swayed her beautiful wet hair and ran over happily. Her fluffy pajamas made her look like a koala bear. She hugged her father's calf and wanted to rub against it. "Papa." Kiki stared at him with her big eyes and curiously waved her little hand. She asked, "Papa, who are you calling? Is it Sister Beibei?" Don't look at how muddle-headed this little fellow is. Sometimes her sixth sense is very accurate. She saw the happy smile on her father's face and vaguely felt that it should be Sister Beibei. "Dad hasn't taken a shower yet. Don't rub against me, or you'll stink again." Poplar Fruit quickly held Kiki down with one hand and said to her, "It's Sister Beibei. Dad wants you to say hello to Sister Beibei later." Just a greeting was definitely not enough to satisfy Chi-Chi. Kiki continued to pull her father's right hand, trying to pull him down and snatch the phone from him. Needless to say, The little girl had a lot of strength. She could even push a heavy wooden chair with great difficulty. Woo! Kiki pulled her father's hand while stamping her little feet. She pouted and unhappily called out, "Kiki, Mrs. Sister Bebe. Papa, let me answer the phone, okay?" The last sentence, okay, was not a question or an imperative sentence. It was an emphasis sentence with a coquettish nasal sound. Kiki was a little impatient and did not want to wait a moment longer. "Uncle, let Kiki answer the phone. I'll talk to her." Fong Bei heard the commotion and said with a grin, "I haven't seen Kiki in a long time. I miss her too." Poplar Fruit was a little depressed. He looked at Kiki and felt a little awkward. He did not say much to his girlfriend and she was snatched away by Kiki. This feeling was really not good. Hee, uncle, don't be jealous. I'll talk to you later. Be good." Fong Bei seemed to feel Poplar Fruit's reluctance and said with a smile. Poplar Fruit could only angrily pass the phone to Kiki. If it was in the past, Kiki would hold the phone and talk with half of her face pressed against it. However, perhaps because the weather was a little hot and the phone screen was a little hot from her father's hand, Kiki did not do so. Thus, Poplar Fruit saw Kiki familiarly fumble for the buttons to light up the screen. Then, she pressed the power amplifier and put the phone on the sofa. She climbed up and happily chatted with Fong Bei. This feeling is really making me angry." That's right, Poplar Fruit was jealous of his daughter. Just a moment ago, he wanted to let Kiki talk to Fong Bei, but he did not expect the little girl to turn the tables and directly push him away. Poplar Fruit stood in the same place for a few seconds and began to walk around impatiently. 1 minute, 2 minutes passed, but Kiki and Fong Bei were still chatting in full swing. Looking at Kiki's wet hair, Poplar Fruit found something for himself to do. He took a soft and clean towel from the bathroom and sat behind Kiki to dry her hair. Kiki unhappily twisted her little butt, pouted her little mouth and looked back at her father. Then, she complained to Fong Bei, "Papa is bad. I'll dry your hair for you. It won't affect you talking to Sister Bei." Poplar Fruit said righteously, "Dry it so you can sleep well later." It seemed to make sense, but Kiki faintly felt that her father did it on purpose. She said angrily to the phone, "Papa is bad. Big bad wolf." Hearing the voice, Fong Bei felt as if she was there. Seeing Poplar Fruit's jealous expression, she could not stop laughing on the other end of the phone. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 751. Kiki and Fong Bei's conversation was also interesting. Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to it at first, but after he put away his silly jealousy, he found that the little guy's innocent words were so funny. Chi-Chi had probably tried her best to introduce Fong Bei to Uncle Cool and his family who had come to visit this afternoon. "Little sister has a name," Kiki said. "Brother Romeo told me that her name is Harper, and Severn." Brother Cruz said 6, 7, 8, night, 10, 7. Poplar Fruit was somewhat puzzled. Why are there 2 names? Maybe it's a surname? Poplar Fruit thought, it could also be a middle name. Did Kiki politely say hello to uncle and auntie, as well as brothers and sisters? Fong Bei asked with a smile. Yes. Kiki spoke in English and explained, "My brothers can't speak French. But Kiki's English is better than Sister Luo Danny's." "Well, Kiki is great," Fong Bei praised. Poplar Fruit chuckled. He knew that Fong Bei didn't fully understand. Although Fong Bei's English has passed CET 4, it still remains at the level of mute English. Poplar Fruit estimated that if she went out to the supermarket to buy some daily necessities, she would be in a hurry. "Uncle." Fong Bei heard Poplar Fruit's laughter. The two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding of each other's thoughts. She immediately pouted. Sister Luo Danny told Kiki that Brother Romeo is a bit bad. Kiki complained to Fong Bei somewhat indignantly. "Why?" Fong Bei asked. "That is, just before, Sister Luo Danny went to celebrate Brother Romeo's birthday." Chi-Chi spoke very seriously. but she still needed to think about how to use the words. However, she still chose to express it in English. He telled Rodney, he said to Sister Luo Danny, I love you. Fong Bei Bei was somewhat confused. It means that Romeo told Luo Danny that I like you. Poplar Fruit laughed. I can understand. Fong Bei Bei snappily said. It's that simple, it's not like I haven't watched US dramas. Kiki frowned and thought. She took her father's hand, shook her head and said, No, love is not like. Papa, didn't you say that love is love? Papa often says this sentence to Kiki. Okay. Poplar Fruit waved his hand, he just wanted to use a lighter word, he didn't expect to be exposed by Kiki. It's I love you. But. Kiki finally said the doubts in her heart. Isn't love something that Papa said to Kiki? Why did Brother Romeo tell Sister Luo Danny? It's all Poplar Fruit's fault. When he explained this sentence to Kiki, he was worried that his daughter would foolishly say I love you to other boys, and then deceive her that this sentence can only be a little secret between Papa and Kiki. Kiki thought for a long time but still couldn't figure it out. When Kiki said it, Poplar Fruit also remembered. He laughed twice, he didn't know how to answer. Fortunately, Fong Bei Bei was there. She smiled and explained to Kiki, like means that you think someone or a fun toy is very good, so you say you like it. For example, Kiki likes Barbie dolls, right? Yes. Kiki nodded. But love is like. Fong Bei Bei said in a very gentle voice, I don't know how many times like is like. Anyway, Kiki has to remember, love is like you like very much, you want to be with him all the time, if you leave him, you feel like the world is about to collapse. This is called love. Poplar Fruit was a little moved in his heart. He felt that Fong Bei Bei's words were not only for Kiki, but also for him. Thinking about how Fong Bei Bei was so sleepy that she kept yawning and wanted to listen to his voice, Poplar Fruit felt his heart soften. Kiki tilted her head. She didn't understand why the world would collapse. With Kiki's current level of logic, these abstract concepts were still very difficult to understand. However, she still said as if she understood, Oh. Kiki also wants to be with Papa. So Kiki doesn't like, but loves Papa. Alright. Fong Bei Bei laughed. Then does Kiki love Sister Bei Bei? Kiki pouted her mouth and thought for a while. She looked very serious, then nodded and said, Kiki also loves Sister Bei Bei. Sister Bei Bei, after Kiki goes back with Papa, can I still live with Sister Bei Bei? That depends on your father's performance. Fong Bei Bei said somewhat deliberately. Unexpectedly, Kiki was a little depressed. She said with grievance, Why? Is it because Sister Bei Bei doesn't love Kiki anymore? The little girl felt so wronged that her big eyes were filled with mist, and her voice was also a little sad. No, your Sister Bei Bei said that Papa still has to work hard, then she will live with us. Poplar Fruit quickly explained. However, Poplar Fruit's explanation seemed to be a little profound to Kiki, and it didn't have any effect. Fong Bei Bei said unhappily, Uncle, don't interrupt. Kiki, of course Sister Bei Bei loves you. Don't worry, Sister will still be with Kiki when I go back, and then we will drive your father out, okay? Poplar Fruit sweated profusely. Don't. Kiki finally didn't feel wronged, she also giggled. Sister Bei Bei also wants to love Papa, that way, Papa, Kiki, and Sister Bei Bei can never be separated. The little girl felt that she had found a particularly clever way, and happily danced on the sofa. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei Bei didn't say anything, they sat quietly with a smile, listening to Kiki's laughter, as if there was a kind of warm feeling flowing between each other's hearts. After snatching the phone from Kiki's hand with great difficulty, Poplar Fruit also chatted with Fong Bei Bei for a while. Tomorrow? Or the day after tomorrow? Is it the day after tomorrow? Fong Bei Bei was a little too sleepy. It was a little difficult to calculate the time difference. She yawned and said, You should be on the stage soon. Uncle, don't be too stressed. Fighting. Fong Bei Bei didn't learn English well. She learned this cheering phrase from watching variety shows in South Korea. From tomorrow onwards, I can't contact you. I don't know if I'll be secretly caught to sell pigs, Fong Bei Bei said with a pout. But, I'm still waiting for your good news. What are you talking about? Idiot. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, I'll also be waiting for your good news, baby. Do your best in the competition. I will. With Uncle's secret book, we'll win the big prize this year. Fong Bei Bei waved her hands and shouted softly with joy. She was in the hotel's safe passage. Although there was no one around, she still couldn't shout. I believe in you too. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Okay, baby, go to sleep. Look at how sleepy you are. Quickly adjust your state. We'll see you in a week. Hey, stupid uncle, you're the big idiot. Fong Bei Bei said with a smile. How can it be just a week? You're in Bali, I'm in LA, how can we go home in a week? Poplar Fruit smiled and didn't say anything, but his eyes were shining like stars. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 752. The last day of rehearsals was like a war. They were busy for a whole day. They didn't care about their stamina and crazily rehearsed. This made Yang Guo's strong body feel a little tired. This was because Yang Guo was in good health. If it were another weak model, they would have to do 2 full rehearsals and more than 10 small rehearsals. But Yang Guo walked more than 200 times on the catwalk. If it were someone else, they would be so tired that they would collapse on the ground. Yin Xingyu and Yi Jing also boarded the plane in China. Poplar Fruit arranged everything with them over the phone, but he was destined to have no time to pick them up at the airport. Fortunately, he had a good assistant, Fong Min. With her help, Poplar Fruit was relieved. After the 2 students arrived, Poplar Fruit asked Fong Min to take them to the major scenic spots in Bali. The tickets to the main stage were too difficult to get, so Poplar Fruit could only give them tickets to the other stages behind. So, before that, they could go where they wanted to go, and they could also go shopping. After all, many luxury goods in Bali were very cheap compared to the prices in China. In the evening, Poplar Fruit did not translate for another 2 hours before going to bed. Instead, he gave himself a chance to relax. Tomorrow, he would perform on the main stage of the Louvre, which was the focus of the world's attention. Poplar Fruit was very excited. Although I will not continue in this industry in the future, Poplar Fruit was still a playful person. He touched Kiki's soft bangs and murmured, I will seize this opportunity to show you, who look down on me, my strength. Although he liked to keep a low profile, Poplar Fruit still had his own pride. If he did not do it, he would not do it, but if he did, he must be the first. He would not say this to others, but he would prove it with his actions. After a pause, Poplar Fruit turned on the computer and clicked on a video software on the desktop. He glanced at Kiki, who was sleeping soundly beside him. Her little face was tender, her nose was gently moving, and her breathing was a little long. The little girl was still in a deep sleep, so the soft sound of the video wouldn't disturb her. Therefore, Poplar Fruit did not put on his headphones. He just lowered the volume. Only a small light was turned on in the bedroom. The flickering light from the screen reflected on Poplar Fruit's face, illuminating his gentle smile. I heard from Uncle Long that Kiki's father, Poplar Fruit's uncle, is going to compete with a lot of people in Bali, said a small voice in the dark foreground. It was Xiong Xiaofeng's voice. Poplar Fruit recognized it. His non-standard Mandarin was too distinguishable. However, Xiong Xiaofeng misunderstood. Poplar Fruit was not competing with anyone. He was just on the tea stage. However, fashion was too far away from children. He still couldn't understand. So today, we, Xiong Xiaofeng and the other students of Poplar Fruit, decided to send our blessings to Uncle Poplar Fruit. With Xiong Xiaofeng's long-winded confession, the video screen began to light up. The video was sent to him by Fat Dragon in the morning, saying that it was a little gift from the children on the mountain. Poplar Fruit had not had time to watch it yet. The video camera was the DV that Poplar Fruit used for teaching and left behind. Compared to other cheap cameras on other computers, this DV was much more playable. Xiong Xiaofeng was in charge of the camera. This little guy was not very interested in his studies, but recently, he had dug out his own interests. He liked to shoot videos and learn how to edit videos from Fat Dragon. According to Fat Dragon, Xiong Xiaofeng was still very talented in this area. Usually, he did not dare to shoot with expensive DV. He played very happily with low-resolution cameras that cost dozens of yuan. Fat Dragon also specially found some online materials for him to learn by himself. Fat Dragon had mentioned this to Poplar Fruit before, and Poplar Fruit was very supportive. However, Poplar Fruit also called Xiong Xiaofeng and specifically told him not to give up on his studies and that he could develop his hobbies in his spare time. Xiong Xiaofeng gave Poplar Fruit a lot of inspiration. If more people joined the remote teaching in the future, he should enrich the content of extracurricular teaching so that children could freely develop their own interests after school. In this society, people who had a skill were more popular. His thoughts were somewhat off track, and Poplar Fruit's attention returned to the computer screen. Xiong Xiaofeng's video still stopped at the transfer of the portrait, and the editing was also very inexperienced. However, such a video served the content, and the technique did not need to be too demanding. Teacher Yang. Many children's smiling faces flashed by, like a photo, and they stopped abruptly after saying this name. Poplar Fruit laughed. Interesting. Come on. Xiong Xiaolin shouted with her fists clenched. In front of the camera, she was still very shy, and her voice was like a mosquito. On the contrary, the other children were more open. They faced the camera, or laughed, or hooked their arms around each other's shoulders. There were also those who climbed the trees and shouted down. Many children cheered for Poplar Fruit in Miao, and 2 of them who were good at learning stuttered in English. These children were really tormenting. Poplar Fruit laughed and scolded in his heart. In fact, how was he unhappy? He was obviously very moved, but he still pretended to be. Perhaps he was reluctant to waste the material, or he borrowed some movie editing style, but Xiong Xiaofeng added some highlights at the end. For example, my daughter wanted to learn how to cheer in English, but she forgot the words. She blushed and waved at Xiong Xiaofeng and shouted, "Oh no!" Again. Xiong Xiaofeng smiled and said, "No need, this is it." Then the 2 of them chased each other and played together. This group of children. Poplar Fruit's moved emotions were disrupted by their noise. Originally, he wanted to be moved to tears. In fact, we are not isolated and helpless in Bali, are we? Poplar Fruit thought about the roller coaster ride in September. There were 2 times when he was besieged by almost all the newspapers he saw. The first time, it was Artil who shielded him from the wind and rain. The second time, there were many more people who supported him. Not to mention Givenchy and Princess Charlotte, even the otaku boss Alan, who was far away in America, posted 10 Weibo posts for him. Now, there were so many children who filmed and edited a congratulatory video for him. Poplar Fruit suddenly felt that he was not alone. In fact, he was the happiest person in the world. And Kiki. Poplar Fruit put down the computer and kissed his daughter's forehead with a smile. He still remembered that Kiki said before going to bed that she would go to the scene with Sister Luo Danny to see her father. Perhaps she was a little uncomfortable after the kiss. Kiki wrinkled her little nose and rubbed her head. Then she turned over and continued to sleep facing her father. The lights were turned off. Poplar Fruit lay on the bed with his eyes wide open. There were so many lovely people supporting him. Tomorrow he would not let them down. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 753. Even though it was just the opening ceremony, Bali Fashion Week had many attractions. Du Lely Garden, Bali Palace, and other high-end venues would become the main stages of the fashion show. Among them, the most dazzling and important main stage was the Carousel Hall in the Louvre. The Louvre was one of the top 3 museums in the world, a veritable palace of art. Walking in the Louvre, Poplar Fruit had mixed feelings. On one hand, he was amazed by the art treasures. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the historical elements of the Louvre. Although the Louvre Museum claimed to have 400,000 treasures, everyone knew that most of them were looted. Among them, only a small part of the Chinese collections in the Fontainebleau Palace were gifts from Siamese masters. The rest were looted from the Summer Palace by France in 1860. Even if he knew, what could he do? Yang Guo heaved a sigh of frustration in her heart. It would be great if he could steal all of them. Poplar Fruit thought fiercely in his heart. He could only let his imagination run wild. Not to mention whether Yang Guo had this ability. Even if he did, Yang Guo wouldn't take this risk to do bad things. He was now shouldering a small family. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki and followed the crowd to the carousel hall. That's Leon. Yang Guo was 1.88 meters tall. Even in Europe and the United States, where people were generally tall, he was quite eye-catching. His handsome face and skin color were different from most of the people present, making him feel like a crane in a flock of chickens. He was immediately spotted by the reporters who had yet to enter the Louvre Museum. Poplar Fruit was in the limelight this autumn during the Bali Fashion Week. Since 10 days ago, almost 1/3 of the newspapers in Bali had been following Poplar Fruit's news. The most popular time was after Princess Charlotte's press conference. Because the royal princess and celebrities also joined in, more than half of the media seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. It was hard to say whether Poplar Fruit's current image was good or bad, or whether it was good or bad, but the public loved it. They were very curious as to how such a small fry could have so many connections with so many big shots. Seeing the reporters swarming over, Poplar Fruit hurriedly carried his daughter and ran all the way to the safe area of the hall. Even so, the reporters outside were still attacking the security guards. Audiobook somehow got rid of the reporters. He quietly walked to Poplar Fruit's side and said with a smile, "You must have a lot of troubles after becoming famous, right?" Poplar Fruit nodded with deep feelings. "When you're on the main stage, you'll have even more worries." Audiobook's smile was kind of annoying. "But there's also fame and fortune behind the troubles. I can only say that it's painful and happy." Poplar Fruit smiled, shook his head, and said, "Audiobook, you know I'm not interested in this." Audiobook waved his hand and said with a smile, "All right. By the way, there's something I forgot to tell you." Audiobook laughed and said, "Have you seen the BBC's film crew?" "Ah?" Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. He looked at the middle of the hall, where some staff members wearing BBC vests were busy. "But what did that have to do with him?" "I sold the video of your training to the BBC," Audiobook said with a smile. "They came to film your first stage performance." "Why did you sell it to them?" Poplar Fruit frowned and asked in surprise. He wasn't angry, but he didn't understand Audiobook's intention. "The BBC wanted to use your video to make a documentary about the growth of a talented model." Audiobook waved his hand and smiled. "I thought it was a good publicity opportunity, and they offered a good price, so I sold it. But you can rest assured that the money has been transferred to your account." Audiobook patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, "It has nothing to do with money." Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "Forget it. Anyway, it can promote your clothes." "I accept it. But why did you give me the money?" I don't care about this little money. If it weren't for you, these videos would just be a few memory cards." Audiobook laughed. "After all, it was you who filmed it." Poplar Fruit asked. Audiobook said indifferently, "Didn't you tell me that you were doing charity education? Charity costs a lot of money. Just treat it as a token of my sincerity. If you don't want it, help me donate it to your charity fund." Charity fund. Poplar Fruit's heart skipped a beat. Before he became a remote teaching volunteer, he paid for it out of his own pocket. He had never thought about setting up a fund. However, now that he had a small team, and he might need to collect donations from society in the future, it would be more convenient to have a well-established fund. It would also be a positive promotion for remote teaching. "If that's the case, I accept it. After returning to China, I will set up a fund and invest the money you gave me," Poplar Fruit said seriously. Audiobook didn't care. Time was tight. He waved his hand and asked his personal hairstylist, Victor, and makeup artist, Matisse, to take Poplar Fruit to prepare. He also took Kiki with him. Although Kiki was reluctant to leave, she knew that her father had to work. Soon, she would be able to see her father on the stage again, so she obediently followed Audiobook's grandfather and Luo Danny to their VIP seats. Hi, Kiki. There were already people waiting for them at the VIP seats. Hello, Uncle Cool, Auntie. Hello, Brooklyn, Romeo, Cruz. Chi-Chi was with Luo Danny, greeting her politely. If Poplar Fruit were there, he would have exclaimed, "What, Uncle Cool? Isn't this Beckham?" "Good morning, Kiki." Beckham and his wife also responded with a smile. He was muscular and covered in tattoos. He held his baby Xiao Qi in his arms, and his face was full of tenderness. He had never loved his 3 sons so much. Xiao Qi was more than 2 months younger than Kiki, but looking at her height, she looked 2 years younger. However, she and Kiki were both cute. "Kiki, why don't I see your father?" Victoria asked curiously. She had seen Kiki 3 times, but she didn't see Kiki's father. The Becks were also very fond of Chi-Chi. Not only was Chi-Chi polite, she was extroverted, witty, and as beautiful as a little fairy. To be honest, a child like Kiki was more popular than Luo Danny, who was always well behaved. "Papa is working," Kiki replied politely. Then, her attention was immediately diverted. Kiki and Luo Danny couldn't help but love Xiao Qi. They ran to Beckham's side and looked at Xiao Qi. Beckham had become more and more obsessed with his daughter. His Twitter was all about Xiao Qi. Now, he happily took out his mobile phone and took a picture of himself, Xiao Qi, Kiki, and Luo Danny. Then he tweeted, "Oh, Xiao Qi's 2 friends are here to see her. Xiao Qi, you are really a heartthrob. Hee hee. Love you." Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 754. A grand event like the Bali Fashion Week also gathered many celebrities and even politicians. For example, French President Hollande, who had just taken office this year, also attended the opening ceremony in the Carousel Hall of the Louvre. Fortunately, leaders were not allowed to speak like this in foreign countries. If Hollande really went up and talked for an hour or 2, he would definitely be scolded to death when he went back. The opening ceremony of Fashion Week was actually the debut ceremony of the chief designers of major brands. Chanel's Karl Marx, the Empress Dowager Lagerfeld, LV's Mark, Jacob, Marco, and Givenchy's Riccardo walked out one by one and waved to the audience. Every designer that came out received thunderous applause. It wasn't an exaggeration to call him the Caesar Emperor of the fashion world. Although he was almost 80 years old, his hair was white, but he was still full of energy. He wore a sparkling diamond-studded suit jacket, a high-collared shirt, and black skinny jeans. He wore black fingerless gloves and his signature pure black sunglasses. For some reason, his belt had been replaced with a string of shiny pearls. The old man's clothes were always so classic, but there was always a little novelty that made people crazy. Without needing anyone's support, he straightened his back and walked around the field in an imposing manner. Everywhere he went, whether they were Chanel employees or fans, they couldn't help but cheer and clap for him. Karl didn't say a word, didn't move, and didn't even smile. However, his experience and grasp of fashion were enough to firmly control the momentum of the scene in his hands. "He looks like the Terminator." Poplar Fruit watched from afar, his heart filled with emotion. Poplar Fruit had enough presence on the catwalk, but compared to Grandpa Shang, he was still far behind. This couldn't be helped. There were probably not many people in the fashion industry in the world who could compete with the old man. This was a temperament that had been honed over the years and cultivated through his own time. "I sing for the world tyrant." Artel was not qualified to walk around the hall, but Poplar Fruit could still faintly feel Artel's inner desire. Didn't he also want to have a moment of glory and the admiration of the entire audience? He had been concentrating on his cultivation for dozens of years. Many people thought that Artel was not good enough. There were even many negative opinions in the newspaper about Artel. Artel was already in his 50s, almost 60 years old. How could he keep up with the trends of the times? Poplar Fruit did not see it that way. What is fashion? Was it a flag that represented the trend? However, many of the fashions released during the Fashion Week were only sold in some of the more open cities. The public's taste and pursuit were still far from the fashion scene. Therefore, fashion was a very mysterious thing. It wasn't that it wasn't fashionable if it couldn't keep up with the trend. Wasn't there a period of retro fashion a few years ago? Besides, it wasn't that Artel couldn't keep up with the trend. He was in the middle of the trend. Poplar Fruit felt that Artel's understanding of clothes was really good. Before, he had lacked inspiration and could only make clothes of an average level. Now, didn't he have inspiration? Look at this series of splash ink fashion designs, isn't it? Even the simple ink dots had been used by him. In time, Artel would definitely be able to walk in this palace of art, under the eyes of the whole world. Poplar Fruit believed in him. The opening ceremony didn't last long. With the departure of political celebrities such as Hollande and the Queen of England, and the emergency arrangement of the staff, the fashion show in the middle of the hall was ready. The first wave of performances officially began at 10 o'clock. Givenchy was not considered a big name in front of Chanel and LV, so the order of its performances was a bit awkward. Chanel opened the show, LV was the finale in the evening, and Givenchy was the one who had just returned, or not, from the intermission in the afternoon. The clothes that Chanel showed this year were really beautiful. Poplar Fruit felt that it was in line with Artel's philosophy. That was, the simple patterns had extremely complex changes. Even the same kind of clothes could be made into hundreds of different shapes. Like a dress, it could be designed as a white skirt, but the shoulders and the ends of the hem were fluffy and spongy lace. Speaking of which, it seemed that this year, Karl wanted to focus on the clothes that looked like water. The frills on this dress looked like sponge, and the colorful ribbons on the next dress looked like seaweed. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, it would be hard to imagine how he could make people feel as if they were swimming in the bottom of the sea without sketching out the appearance of the creatures in the sea. Later, it was said that Karl used fabrics that he didn't even know what they were for some of the clothes. Of course, it could be nonsense. These fabrics could let the light directly pass through the lines of the clothes, making this series of clothes show the colorful color of fritillary. It was hard to compare Artel's design with Karl's. After all, the two series of clothes were designed from different directions. Artel used simple colors of black, white, and gray to create a two-dimensional or three-dimensional world. Karl, on the other hand, used the combination of design and materials to draw out a lifelike world of water for you. In terms of creativity, Artel might be better, but in terms of presentation, Karl was more experienced and astute. Of course, fashion was never just a set of clothes. After all, it was worn by people. Sometimes, the role of people was not less than that of clothes. In this regard, Poplar Fruit felt that Chanel was a little weak, because Chanel's main market was women's clothing. From the beginning to the end, Poplar Fruit had not seen a single male model. Looking at it, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. Not only that, but the femininity of women lasted for 3 whole hours. Even if there were some gender-neutral clothes, when worn by Chanel's models, why would they feel affectionate and seductive? This might be a chance for Givenchy. If the audience was tired of looking at women's clothes, they might find a balance in Givenchy's clothes, or they might find the familiar masculinity. After watching Chanel's show, Poplar Fruit suddenly felt a strong sense of confidence. However, during this period, there was still an hour to reorganize. During this time, celebrities close to Chanel would take photos in the show, and then Givenchy's staff would quickly and deftly change the stage background designed by them. During this time, Poplar Fruit had no time to visit Kiki or take photos with Mr. Zhou, the spokesperson of Chanel in China. He needed to touch up his makeup and make the final preparations. Tidy up these clothes. You'll have to change as soon as you come down. The pace was getting faster and faster. The staff serving Poplar Fruit quickly shuttled through the crowd, like soldiers in a fortress. The war was about to start. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 755. At noon, the Carousel Hall was once again filled with new audiences. Because of Chanel's departure, there were some empty seats in the auditorium. Therefore, some fashion buyers who had gotten tickets but were not qualified to watch the opening ceremony came in one after another, filling up the remaining empty seats. Speaking of which, most of the celebrities were there to join in the fun and expand their social circle. Only these fashion buyers were the ones who really knew the business. Therefore, it was not necessarily a bad thing to have them in the audience. Therefore, in the audience, Poplar Fruit did not notice that in a remote corner, there were two yellow-skinned people sitting together. The man was wearing a baseball cap and a pair of sunglasses, holding a camera as long as a cannon barrel in his hand, looking very low-key. The woman was dressed in a white, pleated dress. Her beauty was enough to attract a lot of attention, but because of her position, her indifferent eyes, and silent expression, she was like a stone sinking into the sea when she sat in the crowd. She was silent. She glanced around the Givenchy stage, and then didn't move again. That oppressive and cold aura, there was no need to guess that she was Duan Xueqing. Duan Xueqing had only been in Bali for a few days. She did not speak French and was not good at socializing, so naturally, she did not know that Poplar Fruit was in the teeth of the storm. The man next to her was Pai Din Wan. After he met up with Duan Xueqing, he had been staying in a hotel booked by the Duan family's boutique. It was not because the Duan family's boutique was awesome that they were able to get tickets to the main stage of the opening ceremony. These tickets were actually sent out by Givenchy. Because the clothes designed by Artel had a lot of Chinese elements, although they claimed that they were not trying to open up the Eastern market, they still paid attention to what they should. The top-ranked boutiques in the country received invitations, and the Duan family magically received 2 more invitations. In fact, those invitations were obtained by the masterminds behind the leak of Poplar Fruit's information. They were snatched from other boutiques. Therefore, the Duan family sent 3 people to the carousel hall. One of them was the shopkeeper, and the other 2 were Duan Xueqing, who was purely a spectator, and Pai Din Wan, who was half bodyguard and half cameraman. Duan Xueqing did not sense any conspiracy. At this moment, her mind was not as calm as her expression. Poplar Fruit had mentioned it before, and Duan Xueqing knew that Poplar Fruit would be participating in Givenchy's Bali Fashion Week this year. She just didn't know if she would see Poplar Fruit at the opening show. Perhaps it was a woman's magical sixth sense, but Duan Xueqing felt that Poplar Fruit should also be here. Originally, she thought that she could accept everything and calm down, but now, like the spring water after the glacier melted, it surged and gradually converged into a surging river. She looked forward and did not notice that Pai Din Wan was also looking at her with a complicated expression behind his glasses. Duan Xueqing thought that Pai Din Wan was dressed in his usual photo-taking attire. In fact, that was not the case. Today, Pai Din Wan came over with a lot of courage and the risk of being discovered. Pai Din Wan had previously scammed more than 20 newspaper companies and made a lot of money from them. Presumably, those reporters who had been scammed by him held a grudge against him. More than 20 newspaper companies. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know how large the number was. Among the reporters present and surrounding the carousel hall, there were definitely many from these 20 newspaper companies. Pai Din Wan did not know if there would be a few reporters who had met him when he made the deal. He knew that if they met, with the amount of hatred he had at that time, the other party would definitely discover him easily. Then, the outcome would be unimaginable. But there was no other way. He had to come. Putting aside the fact that he still had that damned mission to complete today, he also didn't want Duan Xueqing to go to Carousel Hall alone. Her old lover was there. Besides, wasn't his identity a cameraman specially hired by the Duan family? If he did not do anything and hid in the hotel all day, he would be exposed sooner or later. Fortunately, when he went out today, Pai Din Wan changed his attire. He wore a low-profile cap and held a large camera that could cover his face. It would probably be difficult to recognize him. Also, at this time, the attention of the reporters was on the stage and the middle seats where many celebrities were gathered. He was still considered safe. However, when he saw Duan Xueqing's calm face and fluctuating eyes, Pai Din Wan felt that he really should not have brought her here. He should not have brought her to Bali. His heart hurt a little. Really. Pai Din Wan felt that he had fallen deeper and deeper. Originally, He had only promised a friend to cooperate with the power behind him to put on a show. However, this show was surprisingly long. Furthermore, when he was drinking tea with Duan Xueqing, he accidentally fell in love with this girl who had always been very quiet. Why did he fall in love with her? Pai Din-wan was very puzzled. In the past 8 years of his bachelor life, he had not experienced the feeling of being moved for a long time. Then, this time, he fell in love with Duan Xueqing, who was 10 years younger than him. However, he had never thought that his ideal type was an iceberg like Duan Xueqing. He still remembered his inexperienced first love and heart-wrenching second love. They were both cheerful girls who loved to laugh and play. Among them, his second love, who he loved to death and broke up with in the end, was a backpacker who often played in the mountains and overseas. It could be said that no matter where Duan Xueqing looked, she was different from the girls he had liked. Well, except for her beauty. However, he fell in love with Duan Xueqing not because of her beauty, right? Pai Din-wan felt that when he sat quietly in the tea room and drank tea with Duan Xueqing, it made him think of eternity. It was really comfortable. Although they did not talk, they did not have the impetuousness of the secular world. It made him feel that his heart and soul were healed and rested. However, falling in love with a person he should not love, falling in love with the target of his mission, and falling in love with a woman who he might not be worthy of in his life, was a mistake. Pai Din-wan was deeply aware of this point. Agreeing to come to Bali in advance was also an escape. However, he did not expect that his escape would not succeed. He saw Duan Xueqing looking forward to Poplar Fruit's appearance. Pai Din-wan was jealous and very uncomfortable in his heart. In addition to Duan Xueqing, there was actually another woman in the seating area waiting for Poplar Fruit's appearance. Princess Charlotte. Today, she was wearing a green off-shoulder dress and a white sun hat with a long brim. She was also very fashionable. Although Gucci also had its own show in Bali Fashion Week, it was an Italian brand after all. It did not have a place on the main stage of the opening ceremony. Therefore, Princess Charlotte had the time to leave the brand she endorsed to attend Givenchy's main show. While chatting with her acquaintances around her, she looked at the Givenchy show with her beautiful eyes and said in her heart, "It seems that guy is going to appear, right? The newspaper said that he is a genius. I'm really curious to see how he has grown in the past half a month. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk." Chapter 756. Ladies and Gentlemen. The host wasn't present, but his voice was broadcasted throughout the hall. Originally, there was still some buzz in the hall because the VIPs were taking the time to greet people they knew and didn't know. When they heard the host's call, they knew that Givenchy's main stage was about to begin. No one dared or was willing to disturb the order of such a high-class event. They quickly took their seats, and the hall quieted down. I am honored to introduce Givenchy to all of you. Givenchy. The opening usually had a background introduction. Although everyone present was a veteran in the fashion industry, the introduction was just icing on the cake. However, when it came to Givenchy's past glory, under the influence of a few supporters, many smiled and clapped their hands. Now, let Givenchy's new stage lead us into a brand new world of art. The host really dared to brag. Even Chanel didn't dare to say it was a world of art, they said it was a world of water. Regardless of the audience's reaction, the rhythmic music began, and Givenchy's main stage began. The first to appear was naturally the Birds of Paradise collection launched by the chief designer, Riccardo. The first two models appeared side by side, causing the audience to gasp in surprise. It was impossible for an artist to completely change his style. It was as absurd as asking Old Man Whitestone to paint a dark sunflower, or asking Van Gogh to paint fish, prawns, insects, and crabs. Although Riccardo didn't completely change his style, it was far from his previous style. One had to know that Riccardo's previous designs were very gothic, especially last year's Dog Head series, which brought out the dark aesthetic to the fullest. This year's Birds of Paradise collection didn't have a trace of black. The pure white and the vibrant green ran through the design concept. Coupled with the bright and flamboyant Birds of Paradise flowers, Ricardo once again changed people's perception of him. Before they had time to savor it, Ricardo's first 2 sets of clothes and the models walked off the stage. Poplar Fruit walked past them on a world-class runway for the first time. That's right. Poplar Fruit was the third to appear. The main thing was that they couldn't display all of the clothes in the beginning. According to the design process, they had to display all of Givenchy's collections at the beginning and make a promotional appearance. Next, Givenchy would arrange the clothes according to the type of clothing, such as long skirts, short skirts, casual wear, business suits, half-length suits, accessories, and so on. Then, he would let the different series of clothes take turns on the stage. On one hand, it would reduce the aesthetic fatigue of the audience, and on the other, it would give Poplar Fruit enough time to change. With a nimble rhythm, Poplar Fruit walked onto the stage wearing the second main outfit of Artel's Splash Ink collection. She saw that he was wearing casual trousers with layers of ink, and a high-collared long shirt with the same pattern of ink bamboo-like patterns. The buttons were double-breasted, making him look even more ancient. His clothes gave off a celestial aura, and he looked like an elegant celestial. With a height of 1.88 meters and a perfect figure that was close to the golden ratio, Yang Guo had already attracted a lot of attention just by looking at her physique. The bright lights shone on his face, which had been made up by Matisse, and the handsome lines, high nose, and eyes that were as lively as the stars. It made people suddenly feel that Poplar Fruit, with a long sword, was a prince from ancient times. Even Princess Charlotte couldn't help but praise him in her heart. What a handsome man! Of course, different people had different impressions of the prince they were talking about. But many people felt that this prince was a Western prince. Although Poplar Fruit had a head of black hair, under Victor's meticulous ironing, it was fine and slightly curly, giving people an inexplicable sense of Chinese and Western handsomeness. Of course, except for a few people, more people paid attention to the model's performance and how well he fit the clothes. Of course, there was no problem with the matching. Just as Artel had boasted in front of the reporters before, Leon is the most suitable model in the world for this series of clothes that I have designed. Poplar Fruit didn't need to simulate anything. His own temperament was a perfect match for the clothes. As for the model's performance, Poplar Fruit's appearance was almost stunning. His impeccable walking posture completely broke people's previous impression of him as a rookie model. Look at the steps he took, it seemed that every step was just right for the rhythm, directly penetrating people's hearts. Different from other models' firm and powerful steps, Poplar Fruit's steps seemed to have changed for the clothes. Although they looked as firm as before, they were faintly more agile. Yes, the feeling of agility was like the bamboo leaves in the bamboo forest swaying in the wind. With this agility, the whole set seemed to have been sublimated. Unbelievable! Many buyers were amazed. Their professional vision allowed them to immediately discover the extraordinariness of this set of clothes. Compared to the buyers in Europe and America, the buyers in East Asia were more excited. They not only wrote down their own comments in their notebooks, but also secretly identified this set of clothes as one of the clothes that must be introduced after the Fashion Week. If we hang this model's photos in the store, it will definitely sell well. The master of the Duan family shop was particularly excited. He had already begun to plan for the following negotiations. There were 3 people from the Duan family, and he was the only one who was serious. Duan Xueqing's mood was a bit strange. The moment Poplar Fruit appeared, although her face was still cold, her eyes were as bright as the sun rising from the sea. At this moment, Poplar Fruit was not as low-key and dull as before. He was like an ancient inkstone covered with dust, shining under the spotlight. But for some reason, Duan Xueqing's eyes dimmed a lot. Perhaps because of this brilliance, she suddenly felt a little strange. Was it because she had been away from him for too long? Pai Din Wan noticed Duan Xueqing's mood swings. His heart was full of feelings, and his brows gradually knitted into a knot. Ex-boyfriend. Pai Din Wan suddenly asked Duan Xueqing in her ear. Duan Xueqing's body stiffened. After a while, she slowly relaxed. Her cold and charming side profile was facing Pai Din Wan. She didn't look at him, but slightly shook her head. Senior. The two short words were still so concise and neat. Duan Xueqing pursed her lips and didn't seem to speak. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 757. That's my papa. Kiki was still sleepy and sitting with Sister Luo Danny. As soon as her father appeared, she seemed to have sensed it and turned to look at the tea stage. With a shiver, the little girl immediately became excited. No wonder Kiki was so excited. She had been sitting here early in the morning with Uncle Beckham and his family. From time to time, people came to disturb them, but there was no trace of her father. If Sister Luo Danny hadn't said that her father would definitely go on stage in the afternoon, Kiki would have made a fuss. Shoo. Luo Danny raised her little finger. Kiki, you can't speak loudly. It will affect everyone. Kiki also raised her left and right fingers to her mouth. She followed suit, lowered her voice, shrank her little head and said, Sister Luo Danny, look at my papa. The little girl didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, her face was full of smiles, as bright as a flower. Is he really your father? Victoria, who heard Kiki's voice, turned her head and asked. She felt a little surprised. She knew that poplar fruit had been in the limelight recently. According to the previous reports about the relationship between Artel and poplar fruit, and the relationship between Kiki, my daughter from China, and Artel's granddaughter, she probably guessed that Kiki and poplar fruit should be a family. Yes, he's Kiki's papa. Kiki also looked at Victoria with some confusion in her eyes, as if to say, yes, why do you think there's a problem? Victoria was the coolest aunt and mother she had ever seen. Although she gave birth to 4 children, she maintained her figure very well, and her usual dressing was very fashionable and handsome. However, Kiki felt that Victoria was very fierce to her brothers and didn't let them go out to play. Sister Bei Bei is the best. Kiki thought of the gentle and kind Sister Bei Bei again. Papa said that we'll go to the United States to see Sister Bei Bei in a few days. Hee, I'm so happy. Although it was very exciting, it only took a dozen seconds to go back and forth. Yongguo went down in the blink of an eye. Kiki couldn't see her father and pouted unhappily. Haha, don't be unhappy. Your father's performance was great. Beckham pulled out a hand, patted Kiki's little head, and said, Look, so many people are applauding for him. It's really good. Victoria's sense of fashion, which could be seen from the way the children were dressed. This outfit is nice, David, I think you can wear it. I think it's good to change your style occasionally. Besides, don't you have a lot to do in China? This outfit should make you even more popular. As the couple chatted, Little Seven held her father's hand and walked around the seats. Children were all like this, unable to settle down. Although Chi-Chi was also sitting down, if it wasn't for Luo Danny holding her hand, Chi-Chi also wanted to walk around and play with Little Seven. Xiao Qi wobbled to Kiki and stuck out her little tongue. Unfortunately, she didn't know how to blow, so she could only make an explosive sound. After blowing, she sucked on her fingers and giggled. Kiki didn't want to be outdone. She stuck out her tongue and made a pft sound, which made Xiao Qi shake off her father's hand and laugh happily. Many times, Kiki's height and intelligence would make others think that she was my daughter, who was 3 or 4 years old. In fact, Kiki was only 1.5 years old. Xiao Qi's childishness and naivety still existed in Kiki. Xiao Qi grabbed the corner of Kiki's clothes and stabilized her weak legs. She grinned and continued to stick out her tongue. The two of them played back and forth and had a lot of fun. However, the Beck's family didn't quite understand what was so fun about it. Kiki, your father is here again. Fortunately, Luo Danny's exclamation attracted Kiki's attention again. Sigh. Really? Kiki looked at her father with joy. This time, Poplar Fruit wore a formal suit on stage. Serious referred to the style of the suit. It was a very common slim-fit suit. Tuxedos and weird-looking ones were still to come. Although it was a white jacket and black pants, no one would say that this suit was from a street stall. The The fit and exquisite workmanship determined the value of this handmade suit. However, what attracted the attention of the audience was the splashing pattern on the white jacket. At first glance, it really looked like someone had spilled ink all over an ink bottle. The ink dots were scattered and only followed the principle of some rays. However, if one looked carefully, they would realize that these strange ink dots actually formed some patterns. Some classical mathematical, physical, and chemical patterns were vividly displayed on the body. What made many people unable to hold back their exclamations was Poplar Fruit's temperament. That's right, although Poplar Fruit didn't change much this time, because of the clothes, his scholarly temperament seemed to have been magnified. This was a complete change from the Poplar Fruit from before. "He's so handsome," Victoria couldn't help but praise, which made Bex cast a jealous glance at her. Poplar Fruit's scholarly temperament, coupled with the suit and his slightly curly hair, made him look like a real teacher from the Palace of Knowledge. No, in this Palace of Art, Poplar Fruit was a senior professor holding a book and standing on the stage, talking endlessly about the development of human art for thousands of years. However, at this time, everyone would ask themselves, among the scholars, was there a man as handsome as Poplar Fruit? Almost none. One had to know that most of the top geniuses were ugly. Today, Poplar Fruit seemed to have refreshed everyone's understanding. He redefined the handsomeness of a scholar and also changed the common understanding of Westerners towards Asians, short and stupid. Perhaps someone would say, "Says who? There's a handsome professor in South Korea who makes the whole of Asia kneel before him." Then, the author would definitely jump out and slap them back to square one. What a joke, You from the Stars hadn't even started filming yet. Perhaps, the later screenwriter was inspired by Poplar Fruit's show and came up with this idea, who knows? Kiki, Kiki. When Little Seven saw that Little Missy wasn't playing with her anymore, she became unhappy and started making a fuss. She pulled Chi-Chi's hand and started calling out. However, Little Seven still couldn't call out Chi-Chi's full English name, so she could only call out the first syllable. Papa went back again. Kiki wasn't very happy, because her father came out for less than half a minute and then went backstage. Although the cool uncle and auntie beside them were praising her father, Kiki was still a little unhappy, and even ignored Little Seven. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 758. It's burning. The reporters from The Sun who were sitting in an enclosed area with their press passes felt like their ears were being slapped again and again. It was a burning pain. Before Gavinci started his speech, he proudly told his peers, "Just watch this for yourself today. My prophecy won't be wrong. Poplar Fruit, Leon, will definitely die a horrible death." Everyone knew that The Sun was the one who worked the hardest to slander Poplar Fruit in the neutral camp. No one knew what was going on. For many years, The Sun had given people the impression that they were black-bellied, vengeful, and had a sharp tongue. They could even turn white into black. However, The Sun did have their own strengths. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become a giant in the European newspaper industry. When people in the same industry met, they would respond to them verbally, but they would still feel contempt for them in their hearts. Next up was Gavinci's main stage. Everyone gave face to their boss and didn't even respond to him. They let The Sun do their own solo show. In the end, not only did this guy's mouth not spare them, he even sent a tweet to predict that Poplar Fruit's performance wouldn't be outstanding. To be precise, he wrote, "Trash is still trash. Even if Gavinci supports him, it won't change this fact. Just watch, he'll destroy Gavinci's main stage today. If I were Gavinci, I'd leave him for the last stage. No one would pay attention to him then. Sigh, Gavinci won't really do that, right? Haha." In the end, less than 10 minutes later, the face-slapping came. Not only did Poplar Fruit go on stage, but he was also the second in line, to go on stage. His performance won the applause of the audience. The Sun reporter hatefully deleted the tweet he sent 10 minutes ago and changed it to a new one. "Oh, Gavinci let Leon go on stage second? Seriously, Leon is really King lucky. Just watch, he won't do it a second time." It's only because of the uniqueness of this suit that he can perform so well. Well, this time, he continued to put his face forward to be hit. Moreover, it was not enough to hit the left side. He even turned his right face over and told the other party, "Come on, hit here. It'll look better if both sides are swollen." In less than 5 minutes, Poplar Fruit was back on the stage. He had changed into a new outfit backstage in just a few minutes. This time, the suit won him another round of applause. This time, if anyone dared to call Poplar Fruit a rookie model, the audience would definitely disagree. The Sun's reporter's face turned green as if he had really been slapped in the face. He sneaked a glance to his left and right, then lowered his head to delete the tweet he had posted 5 minutes ago. He then said sourly, "Givenchy is really out of talent. They actually let a newbie play twice in a row. I think they'll definitely become the biggest joke in tomorrow's newspaper." It was unknown whether Givenchy would become a joke or not, but what he didn't know was that he had already become the most humiliating person on the internet. The initiator of this was a small newspaper, compared to Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation. He had been holding back his laughter as he took screenshots of the 3 tweets from the Sun's reporter. He then quickly added photos of the scene and his own interpretation, then reposted it on Twitter. There were already a lot of people paying attention to the Bali Fashion Week. His tweet was quickly forwarded by many people. This time, the man from the Sun became the target of everyone's slaps. They really enjoyed reposting it with a face-slapping emoji. In less than half an hour, the tweet had been forwarded more than 8 million times. It was one of the most popular tweets of the day, excluding the tweets of celebrities and celebrities. It was as if the whole world was discussing with relish how many times the Sun would be slapped in the face by Poplar Fruit. At this moment, whether it was the Sun's reporter or Yang Guo, they were all in the dark. The Sun's reporter clenched his fists, trying to find a loophole from Yang Guo's side that he could continue to slander her. As for Poplar Fruit, how could he know about the existence of such a clown? Even if he knew, he would just smile calmly and ignore it directly. Poplar Fruit had already performed 5 outfits. Even Kiki had begun to adapt to the rhythm of her father appearing from time to time. At this time, he could finally take a break and take a breath. Yes, Poplar Fruit also felt a little tired at this time. Going on stage was really incomparable with rehearsals. If you didn't go on stage for real, you would never feel the pressure and fear of the big stage. Not to mention Poplar Fruit, even the old models who had been on the international catwalk for more than 5 years almost had flaws. There was a female model in front of him. Perhaps she was too nervous when she went on stage, so she tripped while walking. Fortunately, she was very experienced. She adjusted in time and endured the pain to finish the whole show. However, after she came down, she burst into tears. It turned out that she had sprained her ankle at that moment. She didn't know how much perseverance supported her to walk the whole show calmly and accurately as usual. After all, she was wearing high heels. How did she manage to endure the excruciating pain of spraining her ankle? Poplar Fruit didn't know, because he went on stage after her. After he came down, he saw that her ankle was swollen. Because Poplar Fruit was not scheduled to go on stage for the following dress series, he had nearly 20 minutes to rest. After taking off his clothes, he walked over to see what was going on. "No, you can't walk for a few days." The doctor who rushed over pressed her with ice cubes and shook his head to Mu-en's chief director. Mu-en patted the crying female model on the shoulder to comfort her. Then he turned to his assistant and said, "Let the substitute go." The female model cried even more sadly. It was very difficult for her to get the chance to walk on the main stage. Although the female model was injured, she still had 2 shows to do today. It wasn't cruel. Givenchy's main stage show couldn't be stopped because of her, right? At this time, the substitute model that had been brought over came in handy. Poplar Fruit walked up and whispered to the doctor, "Let me have a try." The doctor looked at him strangely and made way for him. Poplar Fruit squatted down and moved the ice pack away. He said to the female model, "Don't be afraid. I'll give you a massage. This is a traditional Chinese massage technique. It will help your injury." How could it have anything to do with traditional Chinese medicine? Poplar Fruit didn't know much about traditional Chinese medicine. He just used his internal strength to transfer it through his fingers to help the unlucky female model get rid of the blood stasis and reduce the blood flow. Even so, the female model felt so comfortable that she almost cried out. Then the swelling on her ankle disappeared a lot. Hearing the noise, Muan looked back and asked, "Leon, can you let her go on stage again?" The female model looked at Poplar Fruit with hope. Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled. "How can it be? I'm just relieving it so that she can recover sooner. As for when she can fully recover, it depends on her physique. She can't do it today." However, Poplar Fruit still gave the female model hope. Maybe she didn't have to worry about her job. Maybe tomorrow or the day after, she could return to the runway again. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 759. Poplar Fruit massaged the female model for a few minutes. He was so tired that his forehead was sweating. After all, it was hard to release internal force. Now, his internal force had improved a lot. When he had treated Kiki's injury in his hometown, he had almost collapsed from exhaustion. Fortunately, it was Poplar Fruit's turn. Poplar Fruit hurried back to change into new clothes. The female model was sent to the hospital by her assistant, leaving a group of models looking at Poplar Fruit with respect. Yang Guo had never been able to make these models put down their pride and respect him. Even though he had already proven his strength on the runway, he still couldn't do it. After all, the models present were not nobodies. What really made them respect Poplar Fruit was that Poplar Fruit had helped the female model. These models had gone through countless setbacks to get to where they were today. When they saw that the female model had lost her chance to appear in this world-class event because of a mistake, they felt sad. Apart from the competition, they also felt sad for her tears. Poplar Fruit was the only model who had stood up to help her. Although he could not save her from today's loss, he had stood up for her at her most desperate moment. At that moment, many people had the same thought. I really envy him. If only I could have such a kind person to help me when I was down on my luck. What a happy thing it would be. Returning to Gavinci's show, the 20-minute-long series of dresses, maxi dresses, and miniskirts almost made the audience forget about Yang Guo's previous performance. She couldn't help it. Atal's designs included women's clothes and skirts. However, those were all for female models. Yang Guo would never cross-dress as a woman. So the question was, were there no male models in the dress series? There were. You should never underestimate the fantastic ideas of the world's top designers, including Ricardo. In this year's Bali Fashion Week, Ricardo had put a male model in a dress. Moreover, the dress style did not mean that the whole show was feminine. In Ricardo's design, the neatly cut knee-length skirt was somewhat like the attire of ancient warriors. It was paired with a work jacket, a baseball jacket, a round-shaped pullover, and even a pair of flat plastic sandals. It still gave people a sense of toughness and masculinity. Perhaps most people thought that Poplar Fruit's performance was over. After all, he had appeared 5 times. In the history of the Fashion Week, the most models had appeared on the main stage of the Fashion Week. No one believed that Atal would dare to let Poplar Fruit perform more than 10 outfits on the main stage. Only Kiki, as always, was looking forward to her father's appearance. Cruz, quick, look. My papa is coming out again. Perhaps because he felt that his father Beckham didn't pay much attention to him, the 7-year-old Cruz switched seats with Luo Danny. He stuck his head together and played with Chi-Chi and Xiao-Chi shamelessly. Then, Chi-Chi, who was less than 2 years old, forced him to look at the runway in the middle of the hall. Wow! Many of the female audience members screamed softly. If it weren't for their status, they would probably have turned into hungry wolves and howled at the sky. Looking at Poplar Fruit on the stage, you would know why they were so excited. Poplar Fruit's outfit was not the main attraction of Atal's collection. It was not even the second or third main attraction. However, it had an advantage that even the main attraction could not compete with. That was, it could vividly show off Poplar Fruit's strong body. Yes, Poplar Fruit appeared on the stage again in the wolf head underwear that Giselle had wanted him to win Ricardo's approval. His upper body was bare, and his muscles were almost perfect. His 8-pack made one's blood boil, and his Apollo's belt made one think of him as a graceful figure. As soon as Poplar Fruit walked on the stage, the audience went crazy. Not only did the women go crazy, but even the men, especially the little boy Cruz, said enviously, "Kiki, your father's body is so good." Brooklyn was 13 years old this year. He had received football training from a young age under the leadership of his father. Recently, he had received an invitation to Chelsea's youth training. It was said that he would go for a trial next year. He also said enviously, "Yes, it's better than my father's. Dad, I think your title as a heartthrob is going to change hands." Beckham knocked on the head of his eldest son, who always coveted his popularity, and said in a bad mood, "Don't worry, after this is over, I'll ask Chi-Chi's father for advice on the secret of fitness. Your father will also have an 8-pack. When he was at his peak, Beckham's body was also very good. However, now that he was about to retire, and he was already an uncle, his abdominal muscles were less than 6. If he did not deliberately shrink his stomach, it was estimated that only 4 could be seen. "My papa knows kung fu," Kiki said proudly as she straightened her chest and clenched her small fist. Luo Danny also confirmed, "Well, Uncle Leon's Chinese kung fu is so powerful." Not to mention the reaction of Beckham's family, Poplar Fruit's appearance on the stage gave people too many surprises. One had to know that this time, he had once again overturned everyone's understanding of him. He had shown his fierce side. The fierce here was, of course, a compliment. Looking at his muscles, the strong pheromones from afar were intoxicating. In the beginning, Poplar Fruit's muscles felt like they were stealing the limelight, even covering the limelight of his clothes. However, as Poplar Fruit moved forward, his momentum gradually increased, and the wolf head on his clothes also opened and closed its big mouth with fangs. People began to gradually shift their attention from his body to his clothes. Is he still human? Is he a werewolf? Princess Charlotte covered her mouth below the stage. Her eyes were a little frightened and blurred, and she couldn't help but mutter. She said what everyone was thinking. When they looked at Poplar Fruit's clothes, it was as if they saw two giant wolves slowly walking side by side. When they reached the end of the runway, that kind of wildness was almost suffocating. When he reached the end, Poplar Fruit paused for half a second, a model standing slightly sideways, and then gently raised the corner of his mouth. In an instant, it was as if the snow and ice had melted, as if the night had disappeared, as if the clouds had parted and the sun had risen. The fierce giant wolf once again turned back into a charming masculine handsome man. Poplar Fruit's toothless smile almost charmed all the women present. And he didn't give them time to think at all. He turned around and walked back. Like a generation of Wolf King in his twilight years, Poplar Fruit only left them with tough back muscles and a straight back, and his momentum gradually died down. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 760. Poplar Fruit's performance had fascinated the audience. After he left, the audience was still in a daze for a long time. Only a few professional designers applauded Artel and Poplar Fruit from the bottom of their hearts. By the time they came back to their senses, there were already other models on the runway. It was too late to applaud. Sensationalist. The reporter from The Sun scolded when he saw the silent audience. Then he was overjoyed. He thought that although Poplar Fruit had been very impressive, the lack of applause meant that Poplar Fruit had failed. Now he found a point to complain about. He rubbed the photo in his camera and laughed in his heart. Let's see how you'll die tomorrow. Of course, The Sun would be criticized and ridiculed for being the only one in the city who had openly criticized Poplar Fruit. But that would be a story for another day. He was the only one who thought that way. The other reporters couldn't wait to think about how to describe the shock brought by Poplar Fruit. There was no doubt that it was a success. Almost all of the buyers in the venue drew heavily on their notebooks, suppressing the excitement in their hearts. Regardless of whether it was the East or the West, all of the buyers saw a business opportunity in this. Oh my God, as long as the photos and videos of today's show are circulated, fitness enthusiasts all over the world will definitely go crazy for this pair of pants. In fact, everyone, including Artil, had underestimated the impact of Poplar Fruit's show. They didn't know that in the future, the pants and its pirated versions would be sold out for more than a month. Its sales would even exceed all the clothes of all the brands in this year's Bali Fashion Week. What was even more unexpected was that in the more open Western world, many young people who had strong confidence in their figures were topless. They wore wolf head underwear on the streets and mixed in various sports grounds. Inadvertently, this kind of dressing became a different kind of fashion. The fire started by Poplar Fruit burned until mid-November, when it gradually stopped because of the cold weather. Artil didn't even think about this. Now he was relieved to see Poplar Fruit's performance backstage. When Poplar Fruit came down, he walked up to Poplar Fruit and patted him on the shoulder, praising him, "Good job, good job." Although he didn't hear any applause, Artil still felt the atmosphere ignited by Poplar Fruit, which was enough. That was the reason why he was relieved. After all, Artil was the one who was under the most pressure. First of all, he had ignored other people's objections and boldly used Poplar Fruit, who had no experience at all, which had caused a lot of objections from the media before. If he used Poplar Fruit, he might succeed because of Poplar Fruit and fail because of Poplar Fruit. If Poplar Fruit failed, he could hide from China, but he couldn't hide anywhere. And he definitely had to take all the responsibility and blame. Moreover, even if Artil managed to get through the main stage safely, he would still be criticized by the media if his performance was not outstanding enough. Because he had arranged for Poplar Fruit to perform more than 10 times today, people would ask him why he had arranged for the same model to perform more than once. Was there no one else in Givenchy? Since other models could perform as well as Poplar Fruit, why not give others a chance? Was there a conspiracy? Therefore, only when Poplar Fruit reached the level that he said, "Leon is the most suitable man in the world to wear the clothes I designed," only then would people give up. Today, Poplar Fruit had given him a big surprise. Needless to say, Poplar Fruit had performed very well in the first 5 outfits. Just now, in the wolf head underwear, Poplar Fruit had burst out with energy that he had never seen before. If it weren't for the fact that there was still a show to do, Artil would have rushed to the rooftop, straightened his old chest, pointed at the pedestrians below and shouted, "Who else?" Yes, who dared to say that other models could perform as well as Poplar Fruit? Artil would never believe it. Because Poplar Fruit's performance was absolutely unprecedented and unparalleled. Artil only said one sentence to Poplar Fruit, then immediately let go of Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit had to hurry to change and touch up his makeup. 3 minutes later, he still had to go on stage. Below the runway, Pai Din-won was also shocked by Poplar Fruit's performance. He subconsciously glanced at Duan Xueqing and found that Duan Xueqing just glanced at him and then turned her head away. Pai Din-won took a deep breath. He didn't feel secretly happy, but a little depressed. He understood this feeling. He loved someone but couldn't be with her. When they met again, he couldn't look at her directly. It wasn't that he didn't love her anymore, but that he couldn't let her go. Gently touching his chest, Pai Din-won wondered if he was stupid or crazy. He fell in love with someone he shouldn't have and changed his free and easy style. Now, his heart was bleeding again and again. Only the atmosphere here was depressing. The whole hall was full of joy and harmony. Princess Charlotte was also happily chatting with her friends. Of course, the topic was Poplar Fruit, who had just performed well. "Charlotte, you have good taste," her friend joked. "Of course. What's wrong with the person I like?" Princess Charlotte laughed without pretense. "When are you going to announce your relationship?" Her friend continued to tease her. Announce what relationship? Only then did Princess Charlotte come to her senses. She patted him with a smile and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Don't let others hear it and make it into a scandal. I have nothing to do with him. Besides, didn't you see the video of him being interviewed?" Princess Charlotte said. He has a child and a girlfriend. So what? Her friend calmly said. If you like him, then do it. He's not married anyway. Do you think I'm you? The daughter of a rich man. Princess Charlotte laughed. She was referring to the restrictions brought about by her identity as a princess. Forget it. I'm not interested in him. You know my type. He doesn't fit at all. Anyway, I think he's pretty manly, her friend said casually. With such a good figure, he must be good in bed. Hey, you perverted woman. What's in your head? Princess Charlotte laughed and patted her friend. Hey, stop talking. He's coming out again. Don't disturb me from looking at handsome guys. Her friend pushed Princess Charlotte away and looked at the runway excitedly. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 761. Poplar Fruit appeared on the stage again under the expectant eyes of the audience. This time, when he walked on the stage, he heard a lot of sighs. Then, the audience laughed softly. The sighs were because they saw Poplar Fruit put on his shirt, and the laughter was just kind laughter. They also felt that their sighs were a bit ridiculous. Would they only be happy when Poplar Fruit took off all his clothes? At this time, they realized the purpose of coming here. They were here to enjoy the fashion show, not to watch a striptease. Poplar Fruit was a little confused by the audience's reaction. Because the spotlights were shining face to face, Poplar Fruit couldn't see the audience's expressions clearly. He could only distinguish whether they were praising him or blaming him by their voices. But this time, he really didn't understand. If they were praising him, then what was the meaning of the sighs? If they were blaming him, Poplar Fruit didn't feel the sarcasm in their laughter. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was a freak who could do two things at once. While he was thinking, he was able to walk on the runway according to his own ideas without being affected. Of course, when he turned around confidently, the thunderous applause behind him made him feel a little better. And this time, the applause didn't stop until Poplar Fruit stepped off the stage. What he didn't know was that the audience was actually making up for the applause they owed him last time as well as this time. It wasn't easy. After all, the audience wasn't ordinary people who liked to make a fuss. They were either well-known designers or buyers in the fashion industry, or famous celebrities and stars in society. Good, good, good. Artel excitedly greeted Poplar Fruit again. From his point of view, Poplar Fruit's performance was getting better and better, even better than before. And his fit with the clothes was almost 100%. In just a few minutes, Poplar Fruit had changed his temperament and performed so perfectly. Even Artel sincerely admired him. Is it really okay? Didn't many people sigh in disappointment? Poplar Fruit asked worriedly. He had confidence in himself, but he couldn't grasp the audience's pulse. Haha, if you take off your clothes, I can guarantee that they won't sigh. Artel patted Poplar Fruit on the shoulder and said with a smile, Don't think too much. You did a good job. Didn't you see the audience applauding you? Listen, it only stopped now. Poplar Fruit shrugged and smiled. Okay, I understand. I'm going to change. He still had about 10 more performances to go on stage. Although it was not as good as Young 32nd Young Master, it was enough to make him suffer. Artel, who has been dormant for decades, has shocked the world with a single brilliant feat this time. In the hall, many fashion critics began to shift their attention from Poplar Fruit to the series of Splash Ink-style clothes. With their keen eyes, they soon realized that Artel was going to lead a new generation of fashion trends. In other words, they had already decided that this show was the moment when they witnessed the rise of a legendary designer. Fashion had no boundaries. Just like old Master Karl before, the seemingly simple but actually complicated combination was a trend. Artel was the same. His minimalistic and even stingy use of color, as well as his oriental style, would also become fashion. There were no tricks to fashion. Even some children's casual cutting would overwhelm the designer's painstaking meditation and become fashion. Of course, this situation was very rare. However, The threshold of fashion was really high. Talent and opportunity were indispensable. Artel's design was his talent, and Poplar Fruit's appearance was his opportunity. If Poplar Fruit hadn't helped him show this series of clothes as a model, his clothes would probably have become fashion. However, they would never have reached the height that everyone expected, and he would never have become a legend. However, opportunity was also a kind of strength. If it hadn't been for Artel's ability to recognize people, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have stood on this stage, and his clothes wouldn't have shone so brightly. Therefore, Artel's success was ultimately due to himself. Givenchy has now set up 2 flags. Ricardo didn't feel unhappy. Sitting in the VIP area, he gently clapped and thought happily in his heart. Givenchy was not as good as Chanel and LV in the ranking of brands in France, which could be seen from the arrangement of today's main stage. However, at the international level, there were many brands ahead of Givenchy. With Artel and him, Givenchy would definitely reach a higher level. Because Poplar Fruit had given the audience too many surprises in the Wolf Head Panties show, Poplar Fruit's brilliant performance this time only made them feel surprised again, but not as surprised as the last time. Fortunately, this difference didn't make them feel disappointed in Poplar Fruit. At this time, except for the reporter from The Sun who inexplicably argued with Poplar Fruit, almost everyone in the audience recognized Poplar Fruit's strength as a model. As for the celebrities, besides paying attention to the clothes, they paid more attention to Poplar Fruit as a person. What they were interested in talking about was Poplar Fruit's constantly changing temperament and style. It could be said that almost every time Poplar Fruit appeared on stage, he changed everyone's perception of him. From the first mixed blood prince to the calm and handsome professor, and then to the wild werewolf who made women's hearts pound, Poplar Fruit's lively eyes and constantly changing temperament could achieve a near-perfect fit with different types of clothes, even if he was expressionless from beginning to end. "A magician with hundreds of changes," a celebrity exclaimed. Hundreds of changes? It seemed that this word was really suitable for Poplar Fruit. Just like an excellent actor, he looked exactly like what he was acting. Poplar Fruit looked good in whatever clothes he wore. When someone heard this comment, it immediately spread. Later, a newspaper reporter heard it and used the words, "magician with hundreds of changes," in the headlines the next day. It was also crazily reposted on the internet. Thus, Poplar Fruit's short modeling career became a legend. But this was all in the future. Right now, the audience was staring intently at the main stage of Givenchy. They eagerly expressed their expectations, hoping that Poplar Fruit, the ever-changing model, would give them a different feeling. In fact, Poplar Fruit satisfied all their expectations. Until the finale, Poplar Fruit appeared almost continuously. In the end, he appeared in Artel's main clothes. The passionate scholar who seemed to have traveled from ancient times once again charmed the audience. Until the end, the applause didn't stop. There was even the first thank you gift from a model in the history of Fashion Week. Although it was with Artel, it was still a glorious moment for Poplar Fruit. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 762. Leon, what are you doing? Artel asked Poplar Fruit, who was about to turn around and walk backstage. Poplar Fruit asked him curiously, "I'm changing my clothes. What's wrong?" Poplar Fruit was neither happy nor sad. He was just a little emotional about the applause he had just received. He didn't think he was that great. On the contrary, because he didn't have time to take care of his daughter, Poplar Fruit couldn't wait to meet up with Kiki. "Why are you in such a hurry to change your clothes? Didn't you see that so many people want to take photos with you?" Artel gently raised his chin, indicating Poplar Fruit to look at the celebrities who were gradually coming down from the audience. Although he didn't like it, Poplar Fruit could only risk his life to accompany the gentleman. He and Artel first took photos with several senior executives of Givenchy, including Ricardo. Then, somewhat numbly, he let Artel lead him to take photos with all kinds of people he didn't know. "I heard that you are Chinese?" Suddenly, Poplar Fruit heard familiar Mandarin in the crowd. Although he had never heard this woman's voice in his memory, it still didn't change his slightly excited mood. Poplar Fruit hadn't talked to a third Chinese person face to face for more than half a month, except for Kiki and Fong Min. He turned around and saw that he knew this person. She was the former spokesperson of Chanel in China, a Chinese actress that Poplar Fruit liked very much, Zhou Gongzi. "Hello, Mr. Zhou." No, Miss Zhou Sun." "Hello." Poplar Fruit was a little excited as he bowed and stretched out his hands to her. "You're right. Haha, you can just call me Mr. Zhou. I like it." Zhou Sun raised her hand to cover her mouth, but laughed heartily. "Your performance today was really great." Zhou Sun shook hands with Poplar Fruit. She smiled as if they were close friends. "If it weren't for someone who introduced me, I wouldn't have known that you are Chinese. However, I've never heard of you before. You don't mind me saying this, do you?" "No, I wasn't in the circle before." Poplar Fruit laughed. "It's normal that you haven't heard of me. It doesn't matter. I believe that after today, you will definitely become a celebrity, renowned both at home and abroad." Zhou Sun waved his fist to encourage him. She only exchanged a few words with Yang Gua, and then the two of them took a photo together before parting ways. After all, apart from Gavinci, Poplar Fruit was still the hot steamed bun of everyone present. After a while, the number of people who came to take photos with Poplar Fruit gradually decreased, and people who were familiar with Poplar Fruit gradually came up. "Should I call you Poplar Fruit? Or should I call you Leon?" An elegant voice came along with the sound of slow footsteps. "Just call me Leon. The name Poplar Fruit is a bit of a mouthful for you." Poplar Fruit remembered this voice, although it was screaming or trembling before. He turned around and smiled. "Your Royal Highness, I'm really sorry for the conflict with your bodyguard." "You've already apologized." Princess Charlotte, wearing her beautiful green off-the-shoulder dress, walked up to Poplar Fruit, showed an elegant smile, and said, "Actually, the person who should be apologizing is me, isn't it?" Poplar Fruit shrugged and said, "I read the report and know that it's not your fault. Moreover, this matter is in the past, so there's no need to mention it again." "I have a question." Princess Charlotte changed the topic and said, "You said that you didn't know my identity at that time. Is that true?" Poplar Fruit nodded and said honestly, "Yes, although I've seen your name before, I didn't know that you were Monaco's Princess Charlotte." "You've seen my name? Where did you see it?" Princess Charlotte was really curious about this. Monaco's introduction. Poplar Fruit chuckled and said, "When I was learning French, I read a lot of books and newspapers. There was a book about the constitutional monarchy in Europe that introduced you." "Papa, Papa." His chat with Princess Charlotte was suddenly interrupted by Kiki's cry from afar. It was unknown how the little fellow broke free from Sister Luo Danny's embrace. Like a little red horse out of control, she swept through the crowd like a wisp of smoke and accurately ran in the direction of her father. When Poplar Fruit heard his daughter's voice, he immediately turned around and left the princess behind. He took a few steps forward and hugged Kiki, who was rushing over. He intimately patted Kiki's little butt and said with a smile, "Why are you running so fast? What if you fall? Papa won't run away." "Papa, you don't even come to see Kiki, you're so bad." Kiki pouted her small mouth and discontentedly ravaged her father's collar with her small hands. Her small nose twitched, and then exaggeratedly covered her nose with her two small hands. Papa stinks again." Kiki didn't like the smell of cosmetics. Every time, she would say that this kind of rich fragrance was stinky. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Isn't it because I haven't had time to remove my makeup yet? Kiki, bear with it. Papa won't stink after removing his makeup." He also didn't like others to put powder on his face, but he needed to go on stage, so there was no other way. Kiki had just run over, and had already attracted a lot of attention. Many celebrities couldn't help but smile when they saw the affection between the father and daughter. The reporters also quickly grabbed the camera in their hands and fiercely pressed the shutter. "This is your daughter? Last time we met, it seems?" Princess Charlotte was left to the side. She shook her head in amusement. This was the first time in her life. She didn't get angry and walked up to ask, Ah, yes. Sorry, I forgot to introduce you. Poplar Fruit only remembered Princess Charlotte at this time. He touched his nose in embarrassment. Papa, what is a princess? Kiki asked in not very fluent French. A princess is a very beautiful girl. Princess Charlotte answered first. Then I am Princess Kiki. Kiki had always been confident in her own beauty. She stuck out her chest in her father's arms and giggled. Poplar Fruit shook his head speechlessly. He whispered to Kiki what a princess meant in Chinese. So, Kiki is not a princess yet. But Kiki wants to be a princess. Kiki tilted her head and blinked her big eyes. Well, if you want to be a princess, then be a princess. Poplar Fruit couldn't persuade his cute daughter, so he could only follow her wishes. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Princess Charlotte objected. Princess Kiki can speak French. Why don't you speak French? Papa said Kiki is not a princess. Kiki complained. Princess Charlotte, don't you think Kiki is also very beautiful? Of course. Princess Charlotte said with a smile. Princess Kiki is very beautiful. Don't worry, if I say you are a princess, then you are a princess. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for recommendation. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 763. Miss, shall we go and have a chat with that model? The buyer of the Duan family walked over excitedly and said to Duan Xueqing, I heard that he is Chinese. Let's see if we can get a better channel through him. I'm not going. Duan Xueqing glanced at Poplar Fruit, who was talking to Princess Charlotte, and lowered her eyelids. Ah. Why? You know, the clothes he is wearing today are so good that they are exploding. We have to be one step ahead and get the best price, then bring it back to China. It will definitely sell well. The buyer was focused on his work and did not give up trying to persuade her. You go, I'm not going. Duan Xueqing did not even raise her head. She was tidying up her carry-on bag, not knowing what was there to tidy up. The shopkeeper awkwardly scratched his head. He knew his family's young lady's temper. It seemed hopeless. He still wanted to use his young lady's beauty to strike up a conversation. If an old man like him went up, who would pay attention to him? It's okay to go and have a look. Pai Din Wan suddenly said. He put down the camera in his hand and said with a smile. Duan Xueqing frowned and turned to look at him. She did not say anything. Her beautiful eyes looked at Pai Din Wan, as if to say, I want an explanation. Go, I'll go too. Pai Din Wan said with a firm tone. Don't worry. His eyes also looked at Duan Xueqing. He was frank and had no intention of avoiding her gaze. Duan Xueqing looked at him and frowned. Then, she turned her head and looked at Poplar Fruit, who still had a lot of people. She bit her lower lip and seemed to hesitate for a moment before saying, There are not many people waiting. The buyer was overjoyed and said repeatedly, Good, good, good. He also looked at Pai Din Wan gratefully, thanking him for persuading his miss. Pai Din Wan did not look at him, nor did he look at Duan Xueqing, who lowered her head. Instead, he looked blankly at the empty space next to him. You have mixed feelings, don't you? Isn't it a little too cruel to her? But this is a mission. And it's this man. I'm sorry, there won't be a next time, I promise. Pai Din Wan sighed in his heart. Back to the center of the hall. Poplar Fruit had finished talking with Princess Charlotte. He carried his daughter. He did not know where he was going. Artier led a few people. His granddaughter, Luo Danny, was among them. Cool uncle. Kiki was the first to notice them. She patted her father happily and pointed to them. Hearing this, Poplar Fruit also turned his head curiously. He had heard this name from Kiki, but he did not know who gave it to him. As soon as he turned his head, he was stunned. What cool uncle? Isn't this Beckham? Poplar Fruit was not a fan of Beckham. When he played football in college, he liked Messi because Messi was not tall and played so well. However, Poplar Fruit definitely knew Beckham. What a joke. If the Chinese knew football but did not know Beckham, then they could really be dissected by aliens. Leon. Artia laughed and walked over with Luo Danny. He said in English, "Let me introduce you. This is Beckham. Who doesn't know him?" Poplar Fruit interrupted him and greeted him with a smile. "David, that's his name. Beckham is his last name. Hello, I'm your fan." Naturally, he had to be polite in front of others. Beckham showed his charming smile and patted the three boys beside him with his right hand that was not holding Xiao Qi. He said, "Haha, this is my pleasure. However, I have to tell you that my sons have become your fans today." "Yes, sir. Can I ask you how to build such attractive muscles?" Brooklyn was not afraid of strangers at all. He asked with his eyes shining. "Children, don't interrupt." Victoria pulled Brooklyn and said, "Leon, hello. I'm Victoria. Your show today was very, very exciting." She used 2 adjectives to express her love. "Thank you," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He turned his head and winked at Brooklyn. He said, "Let's talk privately later." Kiki, who had been holding back for a long time, finally interrupted. She said happily in English, "Let me introduce you to Papa. This is Brooklyn, this is Romeo, this is Cruz, and this is Harper." Poplar Fruit's eyes lingered on Romeo for a moment. There was a smile in his eyes, and he thought, "Oh, this is the little boy who is pursuing Luo Danny. Kiki likes Harper very much." Kiki whispered in her father's ear. However, the little girl didn't control her volume. Everyone heard her whisper, and because Kiki couldn't translate her English for a while, everyone understood. Suddenly, it made everyone laugh. "Your daughter is so smart," Beckham praised. In fact, they didn't know Kiki's real age, and Poplar Fruit didn't tell them. If they knew that Kiki was only a few months older than Xiao Qi, they would be shocked. "Thank you. Harper is also very cute." Poplar Fruit laughed. "There are a lot of her fans in China. They affectionately call her Xiao Qi on the internet." At this time, Poplar Fruit also remembered Xiao Qi's middle name. When he heard Kiki and Fong Bei Bei on the phone, he didn't think of it. "Is that so?" Victoria laughed. "Then the next time David goes to China, bring Harper to meet her fans." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "That will definitely cause a sensation. By the way, if you go to China, well, of course if you have time, be sure to visit us in Yongqing. Yongqing is a big city near the port of China. Moreover, Kiki will miss her good friend very much when she goes back." Kiki nodded and pouted. "Kiki will miss Harper. Luo Danny, you should also come to Yongqing to see Kiki, Cruz, Romeo, and Brooklyn." Kiki. Xiao Qi called Kiki's English name in a childish voice, which made everyone feel cute again. Beckham asked curiously, Leon, are you going back? Why not stay in Bali?" Anyone could see that Poplar Fruit would definitely become a top model in the world after today's wonderful performance. Givenchy would probably give him a big contract to keep him. Poplar Fruit glanced at Artil, who smiled and said, "Don't worry about David. We are all friends. Leon is not a professional model. He has his own career and studies in China. This time, he came to help at my invitation. It was also because of Artil's invitation that I had such a good opportunity to experience it." Poplar Fruit smiled politely and said, "My profession is a translator. After Fashion Week, I will go back to China." "That's a pity." Victoria said regretfully, "You have a bright future as a model. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 764. The Beckham family came in a grandiose manner and left in a grandiose manner. On the other hand, Chi-Chi reluctantly watched as little Seven was carried away by her father. "Papa, Harper's little face is chubby." Kiki whispered in her father's ear again. She unintentionally revealed the reason why she liked Xiao Qi. "It's so fun to pinch." It's like gold, but gold is so fluffy that it won't be cute when it grows up. Poplar Fruit laughed and reached out to pinch Kiki's little face. Oh, I'm talking about Harper. Chi-Chi rubbed her wrinkled little cheeks and pouted in protest. She still didn't know that she was also the meaty type. Especially now, when she pouted her cheeks, people really wanted to pinch her. And Kiki's little belly was so round. When she was eating, Poplar Fruit often touched Kiki's little belly and jokingly threatened her that if she ate so much, she would become a little fat girl in the future. You're a little fat girl. You're always talking about Kiki. Why don't I see you eating less? However, Kiki still did what she wanted, relying on Fong Beibei's support. Leon, hurry up and tidy up, Artil said with a smile. His mood had been fluctuating, and it seemed that he would not stop for the rest of the day. Tonight, we still have a banquet to attend. Poplar Fruit frowned and said, Artil, do I have to attend? He didn't like this kind of occasion very much. It was not that Poplar Fruit hated crowded places, but he felt that he wouldn't be able to chat with people he didn't know. Of course. You can't refuse. This is our celebration party. You and I, the two great contributors, have to attend. Artil and Poplar Fruit had been friends for so long that he knew where Poplar Fruit's weakness was. He smiled and said, and don't use Kiki as an excuse. Kiki, come with us. Where is Kiki going? Kiki blinked her big eyes and asked curiously. To eat delicious food. Artil was like a weird grandfather waving a lollipop. He laughed and said, there are so many delicious things there, such as cakes, snacks, and lobsters. Kiki, ask your father to take you there. This time, it just so happened to hit Chi-Chi's itch. Her eyes seemed to bloom with brilliance all of a sudden. She grabbed her father's clothes and shook it vigorously. She was very happy, but she pretended to be pitiful and begged, Papa, take Chi-Chi to eat delicious food, okay? Yongguo rolled her eyes at Artil and said helplessly, okay, let's go. Dad will take you there. I'm really defeated by you. In the end, Artil asked Poplar Fruit to go back and change into new clothes, and then left in a hurry with Luo Danny. He was the main character of today's show. In addition to dealing with the celebrities, he also had to attend the media meeting with Ricardo and answer the media's questions, and so on. Taking advantage of the intermission, most of the audience in the hall temporarily left to eat or do other things. Anyway, there were not many people left in the hall. Poplar Fruit changed his clothes backstage and came out. He asked his makeup artist and hairstylist to leave together. They took the underground parking passage, and the car was ready. However, just as they walked to the elevator, a group of people blocked their way. Victor and Matisse thought they were reporters or uninvited guests. They nervously stood in front of Poplar Fruit and said, Leon, run. We'll stop them. Poplar Fruit looked at them and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These two guys actually wanted to protect him? It could be said that among the Westerners Poplar Fruit had met, Victor and Matisse were the two people with the worst physical fitness, except for the nerdy programmers of Alan's company. They didn't like to exercise. Matisse was as thin as a bamboo pole, and Victor looked a little fiercer with his big beard, but in fact, he was also a weakling. Okay. Poplar Fruit patted Matisse and Victor's shoulders and said, Don't be nervous. They're my friends. Kiki also looked for a long time. As if she had discovered a new world, she shouted, Papa, it's Auntie Duan. Yes, when Poplar Fruit looked at her, he was a little confused. He thought he had recognized the wrong person. But when he looked at her again, she was wearing a white dress, her waist-length hair, her beautiful face without any makeup, and that cold temperament. If she wasn't Duan Xueqing, who else could she be? Hey, Xueqing, why did you come to France? Poplar Fruit happily stood in front of Victor and Matisse and asked, Don't tell me you're here to support me? Victor and Matisse looked at each other. They shrugged at each other and walked to the side to talk about their own matters. Anyway, Poplar Fruit and Matisse were speaking Chinese, so they couldn't understand. It's a coincidence. Duan Xueqing said concisely. Miss, you know each other? The Duan family's master looked at her in surprise and asked with some doubt and joy. Haha, she and I are old classmates. In university, Xueqing was 1 year younger than me. May I ask who you are? Poplar Fruit asked politely. That master wasn't young. Although he was in high spirits, Poplar Fruit guessed that he was around the same age as his father. Oh, I'm the Duan family's buyer. My name is Tao Buocheng. The master knew his Mrs. character. If he waited for her to introduce herself, it would probably take a long time. Hello, Master Tao. Poplar Fruit put down Kiki and let her stand by his side. He took the initiative to shake hands with the master, which made the master feel flattered. Buyer? Are you referring to fashion buyers? Poplar Fruit recently had a good understanding of the fashion industry. Although he couldn't be considered a true industry insider in terms of grasp and interest in fashion, his knowledge wasn't bad. He asked in puzzlement, according to what I know, the domestic fashion industry isn't very developed. Tao Buocheng proudly puffed out his chest and said, Our Duan family is one of the first companies in the country to come into contact with the fashion industry. Currently, we have formed a group of 15 buyers. This is relatively rare in the country. Poplar Fruit nodded. He was just asking. In fact, he wasn't very interested. However, this time, he had a little understanding of Duan Xueqing's family situation. He turned his head to look at the man on his left wearing a cap. He took the initiative to ask, How should I address this cameraman? Pai Din-wan. Finally, someone responded. Pai Din-wan felt like crying. If Duan Xueqing didn't introduce him, he couldn't talk. Turning his head to look at Duan Xueqing, Pai Din-wan suddenly reached out his hand to Poplar Fruit and said firmly, Little Qing's boyfriend. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 765. Pai Din-wan, Shao Qing's boyfriend. Pai Din-wan's words shocked everyone. Tao Buocheng's master widened his eyes, but he didn't say anything. Before he came, the company had told him not to interfere with Pai Din-wan's matters. Pai Din-wan could do whatever he wanted. But today, it seemed that the relationship between Pai Din-wan and his mistress was a little interesting. Duan Xueqing also looked at Pai Din-wan in surprise, which made her expressionless face have a hint of expression. That was really not an easy thing to do. However, Duan Xueqing was unexpectedly silent. She looked at Poplar Fruit and didn't refute. Poplar Fruit was also a little shaken. Inexplicably, there was a surge of sourness in his heart. This feeling was a little strange. In fact, men always had a little possessive desire. Including Poplar Fruit, in their subconscious, they wanted all the beauty in the world to belong to themselves and not allow others to touch it. In fact, the emperors in ancient times did just that. And those rich people also had many wives and concubines, didn't they? It was just that in modern times, because of the system, because of the law, and even because of their own strength, most people suppressed their own desires. Poplar Fruit was the kind of man who had strong self-restraint. Moreover, in his thoughts, marrying a wife and having a child was already the greatest satisfaction in life. Why should he mess up everyone's happiness because of his own greed? Duan Xueqing was the same. Such a beautiful girl, it was impossible for Poplar Fruit not to like, but he thought that this kind of like only stopped at the level of like. In the past, there was Lu Yunran, and his heart didn't leave any space for Duan Xueqing. Later, there was Kiki. Taking care of Kiki was so tiring that he didn't have the time to think about his own personal feelings. Kiki grew up a little, and he had time and space. Feng Beibei and Kiki had already occupied his heart long ago. Indeed, it was unfair to Duan Xueqing. Cuteness had never been fair. Now, Poplar Fruit felt jealous. It was like an antique that had been by your side suddenly told you that it had an owner. You had the chance to get it in the past. Not to mention Duan Xueqing, even if Song Jiwen, who had been close friends with Poplar Fruit for so many years, if he suddenly announced that he was getting married and being kidnapped by a woman, Poplar Fruit would also feel reluctant to let him go. Although saying this would make it seem like they were gay, it was true. Of course, Although Poplar Fruit felt jealous now, he didn't think that he made the wrong choice. He pondered for a moment and laughed in his heart. He felt that he was a little too overbearing. You were the one who said that Shueching would definitely find a guy who liked her. Now that she found him, you can't bear to let him go? Ha ha. Pai Dinwan, you're really good. You've taken down our ice beauty. Poplar Fruit walked up confidently and patted Pai Dinwan's shoulder. With his height, Pai Dinwan was still shorter than him by a head. How should I address you? Poplar Fruit asked. I was born in 1988. Should I call you Xiao Bai or Brother Bai? Are we close? Pai Dinwan secretly looked at Poplar Fruit's hand on his left shoulder and muttered in his heart. He squeezed out a smile and said, Poplar Fruit, looks like you have to call me Brother Bai. I was born in 1988. Wow, you're older than Shueching by 9 years? Poplar Fruit said in surprise. But that's good too. Older people know how to take care of people. Shueching, this girl, has a princess temper. I reckon that Brother Bai's personality is not bad and can protect her. Towards the end, Poplar Fruit laughed, but Duan Shueching glared at him. What are you looking at me for? Poplar Fruit laughed. Isn't that the case? She's cold, doesn't like to talk to people, and spends money like a spendthrift. Kiki hugged her father's calf and stuck her head out. She giggled and said, Kiki can testify that Auntie Duan doesn't like to talk. She had been secretly looking at that Uncle Bai and felt that it was a little strange. How did he know Dad's name? Kiki thought for a while. It should be Auntie Duan who told him, right? And Kiki is so smart. Sorry. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Pai Dinwan, I have a good relationship with Shueching. When we were in school, I was 1 year higher than her and was her direct senior. Then she was a little boring, so I was the only male classmate she knew. Is she all right? Pai Dinwan walked up and gently held Duan Shueching's hand with a smile. He said to Poplar Fruit, I feel that Xiao Qing is quite easy to get along with. How did you two meet? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. She often goes to the tea house to read, and I like to drink tea. There was one time when we met and sat together. After that, we often drank tea together and slowly got to know each other. Pai Dinwan scratched his head and said embarrassedly, My personality is actually quite boring. Fortunately, Xiao Qing doesn't mind. Pai Dinwan turned his head and looked at Duan Shueching. Duan Shueching also looked at him in a daze. It was unknown what emotions were flowing in their eyes. I suddenly feel that the two of you are really compatible. Poplar Fruit said emotionally, Brother Bai, I'm serious. You must take good care of Shueching. She's a good girl. These were Poplar Fruit's heartfelt words. Actually, there was something he didn't say out loud. If you dare to let her down, I will definitely beat you to death. I swear. These words were already at the tip of his tongue, but he still swallowed them back. He felt that if he were to say it out loud, he would be like a long-winded father who couldn't bear to let his daughter get married. This role was a little messy. Miss, our matter. Tao Boching stood at the side gloomily. He had a feeling of being ignored just like Pai Dinwan. These youngsters were talking about relationship problems and forgot about business. Tao Boching's soft reminder made Poplar Fruit come back to his senses. He smiled and asked, Master Tao, you came to find me. Is there something you need my help with? It's okay, just say it. If I can help, I will definitely help. Tao Boching was overjoyed. He quickly said his original intention. Oh, this. Poplar Fruit thought for a moment and said, I don't have any good channels, but I can help you ask Artil. He's a member of the Gavinci family. Oh, right. Poplar Fruit ran over and whispered to Martis and the others. Then he came back with 3 cards and said with a smile, There's a banquet at the Gavinci Hall tonight. I have an invitation. Do you want to attend? I can introduce you to Artil at the banquet. He was the one who had snatched the invitation. Martis and the other 2 had his own. After all, they were all members of the Gavinci family, so they could ask for another invitation. They could even show their faces and enter directly. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 766. Miss, why don't you go? Taub watching couldn't help but ask as they walked out of the Louvre. It's so rare for us to be able to attend an internal cocktail party of a major international brand. You know, if Mr. Duan came, he would definitely attend. Duan Shueching just shook her head. She was as determined as she was when she rejected Poplar Fruit's invitation in front of the elevator in the lobby. Because of Duan Shueching's refusal, Poplar Fruit only sent out 2 invitations in the end. Pai Dinwan also said, "Shao Qing, if you don't go, I won't go either." However, Duan Shueching didn't agree. She looked into Pai Dinwan's eyes and said, "No, you don't have to do it because of me. That's the place you're looking forward to." She said that it was the place Pai Dinwan was looking forward to, because Pai Dinwan had told her that he wanted to see a big scene, like Fashion Week, or a place where there were many celebrities. His dream was to be able to shoot a film for a big star. She rarely took the initiative to say so many words, but when she said so seriously, it showed that she had a strong will. Poplar Fruit knew Duan Shueching very well. He even helped to persuade Pai Dinwan. In order not to expose himself, Pai Dinwan had to accept the invitation. With Givenchy's invitation, Taub watching was no longer interested in staying here to watch other people on the main stage, so they went outside and prepared to go back. "Miss, I'll go flag a taxi first." Unable to persuade Duan Shueching, Taub watching had to go to the side of the road to wait for a taxi. Duan Shueching was wearing a long dress, so it was inconvenient for her to walk to the side of the road. Moreover, the car exhaust was stinky, so it was not good for her. After Taub watching left, Pai Dinwan let go of Duan Shueching's slender hand, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Shao Qing, no, Shao Duan, are you angry with me? Is that why you refused?" Duan Shueching lowered her head and looked at the hand in front of her. "She didn't say anything. I was just..." Pai Dinwan gritted his teeth and said frankly, "I saw him calling you so warmly, so. "I know," Duan Shueching suddenly said. She raised her head and looked into Pai Dinwan's eyes. Pai Dinwan wanted to look away, but when he saw her beautiful and delicate face, he couldn't look away. "I don't like crowds," Duan Shueching said softly. After a pause, she looked a little conflicted, but she still added 2 words, "just." Not far away, a few people were randomly interviewing passers-by. This was the work of some intern reporters from the Omega Press. However, in this group of people today, there was an old reporter who had been in this industry for more than 10 years. Bashev was very depressed. He never thought that after 10 years, he would return to square one. This was all because of that damn informant. Bashev cursed in his heart. If it weren't for the fact that the informant had sold the exclusive news to more than 20 other news agencies, he wouldn't have been scolded so harshly and thrown into the cold palace by the chief editor. Furthermore, he had to follow these interns and interview passers-by. If he didn't perform well, he wouldn't be able to return to his comfortable office job. "If I see you, you're dead. That damned yellow-skinned monkey." Bashev spat out a mouthful of saliva and cursed. Then, he saw a figure that he had been dreaming about for a long time. At that time, Pai Dinwan had just sent Duan Shueching to the car and was about to get in himself. "It's him." Bashev would never forget the back of the guy that he hated to the core. He was stunned for a moment, then immediately rushed up. "Bastard, get out of the car." However, just as he shouted, Pai Dinwan had already slammed the door, and the taxi drove away. "Don't leave." Bashev rushed to the roadside, panting, but he couldn't even smell the fart of the taxi. "Hey, old man, did you slack off just now? Don't you want to work anymore?" An intern reporter, who didn't take him seriously, shouted from afar. Bashev could only turn around and walk back. He really couldn't take this lying down. "Wait." Bashev seemed to have an idea. He stood still. Just now, the main stage of Givenchy was held in the colossal hall, right? Why is he here? Could it be? Bashev took a deep breath and thought in horror, could it be that this leak was a conspiracy? However, Bashev had no evidence. He wasn't interested in exposing anyone. He just wanted to catch the guy who had caused him so much trouble and give him a good beating. Let me check. Bashev had been a reporter for so many years, and he had his own connections and information channels. He only needed to make 2 phone calls to find out about Givenchy's cocktail party tonight. He's likely to be there tonight. Bashev's eyes lit up. I just need to wait there for him to appear. The more Bashev thought about revenge, the more excited he became. He rushed back to the roadside and wanted to stop a taxi. Hey, old man. The intern editor rushed in front of him, looked at him angrily, and asked, "What are you doing?" Bashev was tempted to give him a blow, throw out the words, "I quit," and run off to carry out his plan of revenge. However, Bashev wasn't young anymore. His experience and reality made him understand that he was past the age of being impulsive. He really couldn't lose his current job. Although he had been demoted again and again, his salary hadn't changed. Plus, if he was given some time to calm down, he might be able to make a comeback. Sorry, I'll go back to work. Bashev loosened his clenched fists, lowered his head, and walked back. Pai Din-Wan and the others went back to the hotel without knowing anything. Hurry up and take a shower. We'll go there early. Tao Bocheng was very excited. He said to Pai Din-Wan. Pai Din-Wan nodded. He sent Duan Shueching back, and then he went back to his room. Just as he sat down on the bed, Pai Din-Wan's phone rang. The caller ID was an unrecorded number, but he couldn't be more familiar with it. Yes. Pai Din-Wan answered the phone in a low voice. Yes. It seemed to be a perfunctory answer. Yes. It was still very casual. I told you. Pai Din-Wan slightly raised his eyebrows. No, it didn't work. He sighed softly and whispered into the phone. After listening for a while, Pai Din-Wan suppressed his anger and said, I told you. He's not jealous. What can I do? Pai Din-Wan suddenly stood up and roared into the phone, I told you not to involve her. So what if it failed? No matter what. Just like you promised me before, this is the last time. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 767. Originally, he had planned to meet up with Yin Xingyu and Vivian that night and treat them to dinner or something. However, because of the cocktail party, he had a conflict. Poplar Fruit called them and explained the situation to them. Then, he asked Fong Min to help arrange for them to attend the fashion show in Givenchy's own hall the next day. Only then did he feel relieved. Poplar Fruit was the only one who was worried. He was worried that the 2 girls would think that he had sent them abroad and then abandoned them. He did not know that without him, Fong Min had taken good care of the 2 girls. After all, Fong Min was a woman. She understood Yin Xingyu and Vivian's inner desires. After shopping for the whole day, the 2 girls were so happy that they did not want to go home. Poplar Fruit got out of Artul's Rolls-Royce. He was dressed in a suit just like Matisse and Vivian. However, Poplar Fruit's tall and slender figure made him look even more handsome. The only disharmony was the 2 gays who were whispering sweet nothings to each other behind him. These 2 fellows were actually dressed very handsomely. It was just that the flowery scarves around their necks had changed the style of their appearance. Matisse and Vivian were even afraid that others would not know that they were a couple. They were hugging each other and were not afraid of tripping while walking. A group of reporters surrounded the entrance. Although there was a red carpet at the entrance, the scale was not comparable to a real red carpet. However, under the crazy flashes of the reporters' cameras, the atmosphere was not much different from the red carpet of a movie premiere. It was no wonder that the reporters were so excited. After all, many celebrities came to Givenchy's cocktail party to support them. Other things aside, They had received news that Beckham's family would be coming. Just for Beckham, it was worth it for them to come. Poplar Fruit did not know that he had actually become popular. It was not only because of the live broadcast on the opening stage. The photos of him at the venue had already been circulated and instantly had millions and tens of millions of reposts. Especially the way he stood in front of the runway with his upper body naked and wolf head underwear. He was majestic, domineering, and murderous. Many women could not help but like and repost it. The Chinese man with the best body. The fighter jet of men. Oh, I'm wet. Does anyone have the same feeling as me? I want to bear his children. The waves of worship caused by the group of fujoshis came one after another. In less than a few hours, Poplar Fruit had become an internet celebrity in the Western world. It was no wonder that Poplar Fruit, a small model who was not a star at all, was showered with flashes as soon as he got out of the car. Poplar Fruit frowned. He pressed Kiki's little head against his chest, and then strode forward with Kiki in his arms, leaving behind a group of reporters who wanted to interview him and let out a sigh of regret. Kiki is very beautiful today. The exquisite bohemian-style braids were also braided by Victor. Artel's nanny helped to pick out the pink lace gown, which made her look like a little princess. After dressing up, the little girl looked at herself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. She remembered the scene when her father refused to admit that she was a princess. She excitedly pulled her father over, then lifted the hem of her gown, stuck out her belly, and said proudly, "Papa, look, Princess Kiki is so beautiful. She should walk on her own in a gown, otherwise her gown would be wrinkled." However, in order to protect Kiki's retina, Poplar Fruit still held her until they entered the hall. The reception was very boring for a guy like Poplar Fruit who was wandering on the edge of fashion. The main reason was that he knew few people, and he stayed in the place where there was a buffet. Few people would choose to eat and drink at a reception. "I'm hungry. I haven't had dinner yet," Poplar Fruit said to Matisse, who came to find him. He forked a piece of secret Brazilian barbecue and put it into his mouth. While eating, he wiped the grease on his mouth with a small cloth. "Papa, Kiki wants this strawberry cake." Kiki also held a small plate and a small fork, and said while licking the cream on her mouth. Poplar Fruit gently shoveled a small piece of cake into Kiki's plate with a small knife. The small cake was decorated with fresh and tender strawberries, which looked very tempting. "After eating this cake, you can't eat any more cake today. Later, Papa will give you bananas, apples, and watermelons. The fruit salad here is also delicious," Poplar Fruit said. Kiki only cared about eating, and a layer of white cream covered the edge of her mouth again. This family was all foodies. Poplar Fruit didn't have dinner that night, so he took Kiki to a place where there were few people to eat. Givenchy was rich, so the buffet not only looked exquisite, but also tasted delicious. What was hateful was that these rich people didn't care about eating and drinking, and left these delicious food alone. "By the way, why are you looking for me?" Poplar Fruit asked. Attracted by the table manners of Poplar Fruit and his daughter, Matisse also ate a crystal prawn ball that he liked. If Poplar Fruit hadn't mentioned it, Matisse wouldn't have remembered his task. "Oh, I forgot. Mr. Artel was looking for you just now." Surrounded by the enthusiastic Matisse, Poplar Fruit had to hold the hand of Kiki, who was also reluctant to leave, and walk to the center of the place. Chi-Chi looked back 3 times with every step she took, causing Yang Gua to look back as well. He looked at the row of delicious food with nostalgia and thought, "What a waste! What a waste! If I don't eat, can I take it away?" In fact, Poplar Fruit also wanted to see Artel, mainly because he wanted to build a relationship with Tao Buoching and the others, who had arrived early. However, Artel always had people around him, so he became the focus of attention today. Almost everyone raised a glass of red wine and wanted to chat with him. "Artel, are you looking for me?" Poplar Fruit walked over and found Artel, who was chatting with others. He stood aside and waited for Artel to stop, then asked with a smile. Turning around, Artel and the gray-haired old man standing next to him were smiling at the father and daughter pair, making Yang Gua a little uncomfortable. He thought it was because he didn't wipe his mouth after eating, but he touched his mouth and found that there was nothing wrong with it. Kiki also felt uneasy. She hid behind her father, and then poked her head out from her father's leg to look at them. "Ha ha." Artil laughed. He walked over and put his arm around Poplar Fruit's shoulder. Poplar Fruit bent a little, to let him come closer, and said, "Leon, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Carrillo from Zara." "Hello, sir." Poplar Fruit bowed slightly, and then took the initiative to shake hands with Carrillo. He was respectful, not because of Carrillo's status, but because of his age. It wasn't until he straightened up that Poplar Fruit remembered what kind of company Zara was. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Poplar Fruit lovingly stroked Kiki's hair and explained the origin of the joke to Artil with a smile. "Ha ha." Artil laughed heartily, and Carrillo didn't say anything, but his face was red with laughter. In the end, he ordered a glass of coconut juice for Kiki. Poplar Fruit also returned to the topic. He asked, "Mr. Carrillo, why are you looking for me?" If it was Zara, it would be back to the clothing brand, which was essentially the same as Givenchy. If they were looking for him, it would be about modeling. Poplar Fruit felt helpless. Although he was indeed very talented, and his performance in the past half-month was shocking enough, he was just helping people to the end. He really had no interest in developing in the modeling industry. He had discussed this matter with Artil a long time ago. The result of the discussion was that Artil wouldn't force him to do something he didn't want to do, and Poplar Fruit could help him endorse Givenchy's clothes in China. All he needed to do was to shoot a commercial. It wouldn't take much time, so Poplar Fruit could accept it. But why did this old man have such a bad memory? Did he just turn around and sell himself to someone else? Poplar Fruit looked at Artil with some resentment. Artil didn't look at him. Instead, he and Carrillo looked at each other and smiled. Carrillo waved his hand and said with a smile, "Leon, you misunderstood me. I didn't think of looking for you." There was a big difference between rejecting and being rejected, but Poplar Fruit didn't care so much. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. However, Carrillo's next words surprised him. "I'm looking for Kiki, your daughter, the beautiful little princess." When Chi-Chi heard her name, she immediately turned her head back from looking around. Then, she heard that she was being praised for being beautiful. Princess equals beautiful. Chi-Chi's face immediately beamed with joy, and the straw she was biting on loosened. Poplar Fruit was shocked. The first thing that came to his mind was to guard against him and beat him to death. "How dare you have ideas about my daughter?" Then, he reacted and asked curiously, "Looking for her? Why?" Carrillo didn't answer directly. Instead, he smiled and said, "Zara has a children's clothing brand called Zara_Kids. It focuses on high-end children's clothing for children aged 0 to 8 years old. We have the most fashionable children's clothing designer, and we have the concept of designing the most comfortable and fashionable clothes for children." Before Carrillo could finish his words, Yonghua already had a rough idea of what he was planning. "I want Kiki to be the spokesperson for Zara_Kids in China." Carrillo said seriously. "Wait a minute, how did you know about her?" Poplar Fruit asked with a frown. As a father, Poplar Fruit's first thought was not whether it was appropriate for Kiki to accept this huge opportunity, but how did he know about Kiki? Although Poplar Fruit was in the limelight, Kiki rarely appeared in the eyes of the foreign media under his protection. "Today, I was in the audience," Carrillo explained. "At that time, I wanted to observe the Beckham's children. As you know, celebrities have a higher chance of cooperation and success. To be precise, it was easy to attract attention. Then, I saw Kiki," Carrillo said with a smile. "Very cute child. Some of my colleagues in China say that she has spiritual energy." He even spat out the word, spiritual energy, in Chinese. "This is very rare," Carrillo said seriously. "I hope to have a naive, lively, beautiful, and cute child as the spokesperson, but I also hope to have a spiritual child, because this is in line with our usual style, 1 in a million. Many people have started to complain about Duan Xueqing's problem. I can only say that it's not that simple. Chapter 769. Poplar Fruit thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, Mr. Carrillo, I appreciate your appreciation of Kiki, but I still can't promise you. Without waiting for the other party to ask, Poplar Fruit took the initiative to explain, the main reason is that she is too young. Kiki is not even 2 years old yet. She doesn't know anything at all if we let her do the endorsement now. The main reason was that Poplar Fruit felt that it was not a good thing to let Kiki appear in the public so early. Kiki was too young. She was at an age where she didn't know anything and only knew how to play. Poplar Fruit wanted Kiki to enjoy her childhood. He didn't want her to passively do things that she didn't like. The family was not short of money. Poplar Fruit could earn enough money to feed the whole family. There was no need for Kiki to support the family. Although Kiki seemed to have learned a lot now, it could be said that Poplar Fruit forced her to learn few things. For example, Poplar Fruit didn't formally teach her English. It was only when he taught Fong Bei Bei and other children that she was influenced by him. This was a talent. Then, after going abroad, under the training of a big environment, she became fluent in English. Children don't need too complicated acting skills to shoot advertisements, Carrillo advised. Sometimes the children will hold the props, and sometimes the children will play together. It's almost like when you walk on the catwalk. Wearing our clothes and walking around in front of the camera is enough. Aldier advised, Leon, I think you're overthinking things. If Kiki doesn't understand, you can teach Kiki. You can walk so well on the runway yourself. Who knows, maybe Chi-Chi's talent is also very strong under your inheritance. Hearing her name being called, Kiki looked at the two grandpas and her father in confusion. She pulled her father's trousers and asked, Papa, what's wrong with Kiki? It's nothing, don't overthink it. Poplar Fruit lovingly patted Kiki's head and smiled. He took a sip of his drink, frowned and pondered for a while. Then, he shook his head and said, Kiki doesn't know how to walk the runway, so there are no plans for her to learn this for the time being. You might not understand, but there's a saying in China that goes pulling up seedlings to help them grow. Seeing their confused looks, Poplar Fruit carefully explained the meaning of the idiom in Spanish and French. Then, he switched back to English and said, Now is the critical period for her mental growth. She can't understand many things like us adults. You asked Kiki to learn the difficult catwalk show. If she can't learn it, her confidence will suffer a serious blow. Kiki pulled her father's trousers in confusion and asked, Papa, what do you mean by catwalk? Why does Kiki have to learn it? It's the catwalk show that Papa walked around on the stage today. Poplar Fruit bent down and explained to her, Papa didn't ask you to learn it. Kiki, don't be afraid. Oh. Kiki heard the first half of her father's explanation and directly ignored the second half. She happily shook her little butt and said to her father as if showing off, Papa, Kiki also knows how to walk the catwalk show. As soon as her voice fell, the little fellow let go of her father's trousers and handed the coconut juice bottle in her hand to her father. Now that she was familiar with the two grandpas, she was not too shy. She lifted her skirt and swaggered in front of her father. Artil and Carrillo stepped back with a smile, leaving the little fellow some space to perform. As a result, Poplar Fruit, who was just eager to protect his child, was stunned to see the following scene. Kiki stretched out her right leg. Her short white pantyhose and small black shoes stretched out from under her skirt. Kiki nodded her little head up and down with a bright smile and stretched out her left hand and gently waved. As if it was the opening of a famous singer, the little fellow withdrew her hand, then shook her little butt and walked forward with her legs crossed. When she walked, Kiki didn't know where her confidence came from. She straightened her chest and raised her cute little face, but her eyes kept looking at her father, as if she was asking for encouragement. After a few steps, Kiki suddenly stopped. With one hand on her waist and the other hand under her chin, she tilted her small waist, as if she was making a cool pose. Poplar Fruit's face was dripping with sweat. This pose was one of the witty and naughty clothes he performed today. How did the little fellow Kiki learn it? If one were to say that adults were displaying their mature charm by gesturing like this, then Chi-Chi's current appearance had turned into a bold and adorable little adult's interest that made one unable to restrain a smile. Not only that, but Chi-Chi's stage presence was also quite good. When Artel and Carrillo were applauding for her, she still held back her emotions and turned around to walk back. Her little butt was swaying from side to side like a real model. Very good, very good. The two grandpas couldn't help praising her. Wow. Kiki shyly ran into her father's arms. She was actually very happy, but she was too embarrassed to show it. I told you, like father like son. Artel said proudly. Poplar fruit, you still don't admit it. Kiki is born to be a model. That's enough. You don't have to praise her. Poplar fruit couldn't help but laugh. He gently patted Kiki's butt and said, Look at her, her butt is almost pointing to the sky. Kiki didn't want to. She turned over and leaned into her father's arms, her two little hands grabbing her father's face and twisting it. Haha. Poplar fruit avoided her hands and then asked, Kiki, I have a question. You must have learned some of the catwalks from Dad, but who taught you the ones you did at the beginning? Poplar fruit also remembered that when Kiki went to practice with him in the morning, she didn't follow her father because Fong Min, the nanny, hadn't come yet. Sister Luo Danny. Kiki raised her head and said to her father, Sister Luo Danny has a lot of performances. She's much better than Kiki. Kiki, don't be discouraged. You've just started. You will definitely surpass Luo Danny in the future. Artel said with a smile. However, Poplar fruit rolled his eyes at him and told Kiki not to be discouraged. Didn't he want her to continue learning to be a model? Poplar fruit didn't want to. Poplar fruit thought that this was also a talent, or that the father and daughter both had a super learning ability. Looking at Kiki's current language ability, wasn't she born to be a translator? Kiki's future should be decided by herself, and Poplar fruit believed that there was no limit to it. However, Kiki's surprising performance made him more determined to persuade Poplar fruit. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.